Greetings, my fellow Americans. This is your President Samuel Ronan speaking, and today is Worldwide Wednesdays. Yes, we made it to Foreign Affairs, and Princess Kayla, first on the list. Wow, that just popped at me like right as I was speaking, so that was an attention grabber. Way to go, Princess Kayla. And as I was saying, let's see, Worldwide Wednesdays, Foreign Affairs. We definitely have a lot to cover. I know the headline is all about Israel and Palestine, and trust me, that is definitely going to be talked about and extensive. I will try to maintain my cool as much as possible. But other things worth mentioning are things like, Milan, Italy, is trying to tell America to not bring ICE to Milan, Italy. Again, immigration and customs enforcement in a foreign country, that doesn't even make any fucking sense, right? So, also, the Japanese Prime Minister, dismissing the entire first chamber of parliament and then holding snap elections. Like, there are things happening across the globe, and not many of them are great. So, with that being said, let's jump into it. Okay. Yep. So, as you can see just from the headlines, Israel erased more than 2,700 Palestinian family bloodlines in the Gaza genocide. Like, that statement alone, 2,700 bloodlines. Humanity has been just working towards the present time for hundreds of thousands of years. Many would argue, if we're counting evolution, hundreds of millions of years. So hundreds of millions of years of evolution, around 200,000 years of building civilization from literally the Neolithic age to the present. All of those people struggling to survive for hundreds of thousands of years. And 2,700 of those entire bloodlines. That's not the total number of people that were killed. No. That's 2,700 branches of humanity snuffed out. We can actually probably how many estimated bloodlines are there globally? So there isn't a distinct number. And yes, it starts from 200,000, 13 million, 27 million, 27th great grandparents. I guess I thought that would be a statistic, like an estimate, right? If there's 8 billion people, surely there's, several million bloodlines, right? Well, it doesn't matter. If there's 8 billion people, right, most families have at least, right, like in terms of bloodlines, right, a mother and a father bloodline and at least 1 to 2 children. Typically, even in large cultures like China who limit birth rates, that's still 1, right? So that would still be 2 bloodlines into 1, right? So you would imagine that China, right, the population of China is like 1.4 billion. You split that into maybe 40%, of connected bloodlines and existing bloodlines or whatever have you, right? And you would still have, like, let's just say 700 million, right? So 700 million bloodlines in China, just give or take. And then maybe 400 or 500 million in India, right? Those are the 2 most populous countries on Earth. And then you do similar context. 40% of 8 billion, right? 40% of 8 billion would be 320 million? No, 3.2 billion. What am I doing? Duh. So 3.2 billion bloodlines at most, right? That would be about the at most. Except that's not even true, because you figure a lot of those bloodlines have much larger child rates, and the point being, right? 2,700 is not an insignificant number in that statistic. And when you're talking about 2,700 family bloodlines snuffed out, from a very small region on the map. That is an insurmountable amount of death. That is an egregious amount of death. And the fact is that there are 6,000 bloodlines still where there's a sole survivor. 2,700 snuffed out. No sole survivors, right? Women and children, mostly young children, right? So you figure families, mother, father, 5, 6 children, times 2,700, you see the math? We're already in the 20,000 range. And then there are 6,000 family bloodlines that are down to one person. If that isn't ethnic cleansing and if that isn't genocide, I don't know what is. And that is the first video that we're covering about Israel committing genocide against Palestine. And as Anna points out, a region of 2 million inhabitants, right? And if you figure the average family there, so 2 million divided by, well, let's just say the average family was maybe 8, let's just say for the sake of argument. That's 25 or 250,000 bloodlines, possibly, give or take on average. There's a statistical likelihood that there were 250,000 bloodlines in Palestine, and 10% of them are gone. Imagine if 10% of the entire population of America was just wiped out from cradle to grave. Just the youngest member of the family down to the oldest member of the family erased completely. That kind of 10%. And then about 20%, really approaching 25%, or no, I'm sorry. No, I did the math wrong. 1%, not 10%. 1%. I apologize. I did get a little carried away. 1% of bloodlines erased, and then 2.5% with only one surviving member. And that isn't including how many of the remaining 240,000 or so bloodlines have lost half or 75% or some other statistic. Because again, the numbers that we are getting about Palestinian genocide is that the death toll is in the hundreds of thousands when the original population was 2 million. So we're talking anywhere from 30 to 50% of deaths of the entire population of the Gaza Strip. And the IDF is directly training Border Patrol and ICE agents in their tactics and what they did in Palestine and what they are now doing here in the United States. Murdering and executing civilians, blaming the civilians, calling them terrorists, and then smearing them in the media. And denying medical care. Because remember 2 years ago when this thing all started and we were streaming and we were talking about how these are abhorrent tactics, like this is war crimes and crimes against humanity, and the whole world said we were overreacting? Well, we haven't even stepped into the video yet.
This is Malik, just graduated from high school. He's celebrating with his father, mother, and uncles. For generations, the Najjar family has lived in Khan Yunis, working hard to give their children a good life and a safe home to grow up in. But that future was cut short. Malik was killed in an Israeli airstrike, along with his father, his sister, and 22 members of their extended family. Nisreen, Malik's mother, remembers the moments she returned to what was left of their home.
The first day I went to the site, I imagined them in front of me. The first thing I saw was my son's clothes scattered, blown away by the force of the explosion. I couldn't stay. All the beautiful memories vanished in seconds.
Nisreen tells us that what haunts her most are the final moments she will never know.
Malik, did he scream? The children, did they scream? I imagined every hardship that happened to them as if it were happening in front of me.
This isn't only a story of casualties. This is a story of lineage, heritage, and identity disappearing in an instant. For that to happen, 3 generations of the same household must be wiped out. More than 20 members of a Najjar family were killed that night. Sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, cousins, so many branches gone.
أكثر من 2700 عائلة أبيدت بشكل.
I just want to really fucking point out here real fast, for the obvious reason. Do you see these numbers here on the side here? 7, 10, 11, 5. Look at their ages. They were in their mid-30s before they even started having kids. Right? 11, 13, 18, 20, 10, 5, 11. About the same age, they started having kids in their mid-20s. 52, 52, 18, 19, 10, and 2. And the 2-year-old didn't even survive. It's the 10-year-old that survived, not the 2 adult children. Like, this is what Israel has been doing for 2 years. And counting, to be very clear. This didn't actually, it's getting closer to 2.5 years, actually. Since October 7th, 2023. These strikes have been hitting whole families all at once because in Palestine and in many regions around the world, the entire family unit stays together. America and Europe is actually the odd one out as far as, you know, familial ties are concerned. Most other cultures and most other countries do not leave the parents' house until they're ready to establish their own actual household, which could be in their 20s or even into their 30s. Some may never end up establishing their own household. So, to put that into context, these people were living together, and it's a fluke of nature that Hadil and Nisreen survived. Because Israel has been, for the past 2 and almost a half years, deliberately targeting whole family structures. And when we were calling that out, Western leaders were arresting and charging protesters for terrorism and saying it wasn't as bad as we're saying it was. The death toll's only 40,000. The death toll's only 30,000, right? You don't get a death toll of 20 or 30,000 or even 40,000 if you're eradicating 20 people out of a 22 family household with a single missile strike. And then bulldoze the buildings into the ground and burying the bodies and hiding the crimes. And the fact that we're finally getting the real numbers, although I don't know necessarily that's going to be listed in these videos, it doesn't change the fact that the real reporting is coming to light. And approaching half of the entire population of Gaza was murdered by the strikes, and the remaining, the survivors, are being killed due to exposure and denial of food, water, and medicine. We are watching the most atrocious crimes being committed in real time, in 4K, and largely doing nothing about it, even taking aside our own problems in our own country. So I really needed to hit that point home.
More than 2,700 families were completely erased, with a total of more than 8,000 deaths. About 40,000 families were targeted, which means more than 4 deaths in each family.
So 40,000 families were targeted, which is at least 4 deaths in each family. So that's 160,000 killed right there, which is quadruple the reported numbers. The total deaths of the 2,700 was 8,000. So really, I guess a household, you would average 4 members, I guess. Lineage, bloodlines, would be 4 total. 4 people. So you're already talking about 2 billion bloodlines in the entire world, right? The whole world is about 2 billion bloodlines if we're taking that as a statistical average. And in Palestine, there were 2 million people, so you divide that by 4, that's 500,000 bloodlines. 40,000 of which were targeted. And that's, again, that's assuming the statistical average, right? Based on the numbers that guy just brought. And we are learning that the death toll is in the hundreds of thousands, approaching 600,000-700,000 or more. I don't know how else to convey that what is happening in Palestine and what the Israelis are currently carrying out is genocide. And that the United States of America, with the full support of both parties and both houses, are aiding and abetting this genocide by providing weapons to commit it. Thanks for the follow, Diz. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, right. And it's been since 1947. No, you're absolutely correct. And I didn't want to start history on October 7th. Just to be clear, it's just for the sake of argument that since October 7th there have been these kinds of casualties and this kind of terror. You're absolutely right. Oh, I see. So immediately with the, I kind of figured with a name like that, but it's okay. This is why the selling of TikTok was forced by the U.S. government. Exactly. It's to cover up the genocide. And then they put Zionists on the board and immediately turned it into a violation of your personal rights and being targeted based on your own self-identity. That's something we're going to be covering tomorrow for sure. But it is certainly egregious. Speaking of egregious, of course.
All right, guys, we've got a bunch of updates for you on Gaza, on the quote-unquote Board of Peace, on the latest with regard to Netanyahu and Israel. And we're very fortunate to be joined this morning by the frontline humanitarian and philanthropist and also executive producer of The Voice of Hind Rajab, the Academy Award-nominated Voice of Hind Rajab, Ahmed Khan. Great to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Hey, Sagar. How are you guys?
Good to see you.
Very good. Very good. So, Mac, if you could put these first images up on the screen, just this is what it looks like in Gaza now. You can see just continued absolute misery. People living in these flimsy tents, winds. We've seen, of course, rainstorms. There's also, Ahmed Ben, and you can speak to this. Israel has now blocked a huge number of international aid organizations from continuing to work in Gaza. Can you just talk to us about that piece and also what the conditions on the ground are like today?
The conditions are horrendous. The suffering has not been mitigated at all. Sure, there's not 24 hours airstrikes anymore, but it's a different kind of suffering, like a slow genocide. So people are still malnourished. People don't have homes. 90% of the homes have been destroyed. People are living in tents, and the tents get destroyed by the wind and the rain. And so there's a shortage of tents and tarps, which is nuts because there are millions and millions of tents and tarps around the world sitting in warehouses. And, it's done by design. It's all by design. The Israelis don't necessarily want everyone to die at once, but they wouldn't mind if they sort of die slowly. And that's happening. Children are still dying of hypothermia, which is crazy. There's supposedly a ceasefire. How do you let children die of hypothermia? It's a very simple thing to mitigate.
Ahmed, there's been
And I don't think we're going to get very far in this video without me losing my ever-loving mind. We're not covering... I want to be very clear, right? This keffia isn't here just for show, right? We don't cover Israel and Palestine to do fear porn or sorrow porn or any of that nonsense, right? Like we are trying our damnedest to highlight the horrors that are occurring. And the fact that they are as bad as they are, and that the things continue to get as bad as they are, is, quite frankly, how do you talk about these things? I guess I can't refresh chat. I'm trying to remove this Israeli flag from chat, and I guess I don't know how to do that. Because I'm a fake streamer, apparently. Can I just... If I refresh the page, that doesn't refresh chat, does it? There's got to be... Oh, okay, clear chat. You can't see... Yeah, but you can see it on the stream. So, I'm wondering why... Usually when you delete something, it deletes it from the source. Yeah. If everybody on chat could just start typing. Anyway. We aren't in the business of just trying to break people down and highlight the sorrow and the suffering and trying to build views due to sorrow and empathy and trying to get likes and views, right? We're highlighting this because it's an atrocity. Because if we were alive in Nazi Germany and the Nazis had social media, this is what we would be doing. We would be streaming. We would be defending the Jewish population of Germany. We would be decrying the concentration camps, the Kristallnacht. We would be talking about the SS going door to door. We would be talking about the Gestapo right until the boots came marching down in the White House and took us at gunpoint or killed us live on stream, right? Because that is who we are on this stream, in this chat. And Anna we covered it. It's gone now. We cleared it. But thank you. From the river to the sea, Palestine will in fact be free. That is 100% where we're at. And that's the point, right? Whatever you are doing today, right, and I'm talking right now, January 28th, 2026, we have ICE agents in America. We are murdering fishermen in the Caribbean. We are invading foreign countries and kidnapping their heads of state, right? Israel is actively committing genocide. European countries are still sending weapons to Israel to continue the genocide, right? We have conflict with Russia through Ukraine. We have China encroaching upon Taiwan. We have fascism on the rise in Italy and Japan, right? We have civil war in, what I believe it was Somalia that we were talking about, or Uganda. Or is it the Congo? Actually, it might be a mixture of all three of those countries. Point being, there are horrible, horrible things happening at home and abroad. And whatever your views are, whatever your values are, whatever drives your heart and soul right now, whatever is burning in your chest, is exactly what would have been burning during the Civil War, during the Civil Rights Movement, during women's suffrage, during the labor movement, when unions first started to form. World War II, right? How would you have reacted during Don't Ask, Don't Tell? How would you have reacted towards Nazis and fascism in Spain, right? Franco and fascism in Italy and so on and so forth, right? Where would you have been with Martin Luther King? While he was marching, while he was giving his speeches, not after the fact and he was canonized. Now, where would you have been with Martin Luther King? Where would you have been during the AIDS pandemic, right? And then the drug pandemic that tore through Black America. Where were you during 9/11, right? What would you have done? Would you have sided with the U.S. military, or would you have sided with the Iraqis and the Afghanis, who were becoming victims of Al-Qaeda that we trained to fight Russia and then turned against America, right? Whatever it is you're doing now, with the knowledge that you possess now, about the events of happening now, right? Because I'll freely admit, I was brainwashed when I enlisted in 2009. I thought I was fighting the enemy and that the enemy was in the Middle East, and if I killed them in the Middle East, I was protecting America, because for some reason my freedoms were being fought for over there and not here at home. I freely admit that. I was also 19 and I was not informed. I admit that. I am no longer 19 and I am very much so informed. And if I could do it all over again differently, I would. I'd probably still enlist because it's a fantastic benefit. But beyond that, I would have still served to protect and to defend my country. I still would have served for the right reasons, the history and legacy of service in my family, but I would have known with both eyes open and both ears listening that we are not, in fact, the good guys in this endeavor. And I would have been more politically active. I would have actually gone to vote. I would have actually gone to events, maybe not in uniform, but maybe I would have tried to get deployment orders just so I could highlight how screwed it up it is that we're heading over there, right? That we're doing these bad things. So, suffice to say, whatever it is you are doing in this moment, in this chapter of history, as it is literally being written, is how you would have acted at any other point in time of written history where atrocities were being committed. If you're standing up against tyranny and oppression, if you're fighting for civil rights, if you're fighting against ICE, if you're fighting against occupation and illegal extrajudicial murder in international waters, if you're against invading foreign countries, if you're decrying the propaganda that demonizes these leaders, then this is exactly what you would have done in the past several decades or even a couple centuries. And if that is you, then this is the right place for you. And if that is you, that is exactly why we are doing what we were doing on this stream and highlighting Israel's atrocities week after week after week, because their atrocities continue to compound every single day. And every single day that we, the people, allow this to continue is a failure of unity and organization, of collaboration to prevent atrocities from unfolding. So, let's get back to the video here, but I just wanted to highlight that we aren't doing this because it's all fun and games and because we want sympathy support. We're doing this because this is what we would have done throughout history.
The development with the hostage remains, the very last remains of a hostage have now been returned. Matt, can you just go and cue up the next part of Netanyahu speaking yesterday in the Knesset? He said, quote, that the next stage is not reconstruction, it is the disarmament of Hamas and the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. We have an interest in advancing this stage, not delaying it. Ahmed, how do you see this in the context of what you're saying? Is this allegedly was supposed to begin some new part of a ceasefire, opening up, some of the pathways into Gaza. However, they're saying naturally, no, we're still continuing disarmament, and that means that they're going to continue to blockade. Is that how you understand it?
Yeah, no, there's nothing new. It's totally in line with the end game that's existed since October 8th of 2023, which is essentially the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And so this is totally in line with that because they don't want people to have their homes back. They don't want the 36 hospitals to be rebuilt. They destroyed almost all of them. They don't want any way or semblance of way to, sort of restart your life. So when they talk about reconstruction, we're talking about building materials. I can't get building materials in. Nobody can get building materials in. Mm-hmm. That's why people are stuck with tents and tarps, even if they're lucky enough to get them. This is totally in line with what the Prime Minister has been saying and what various members of the Knesset have been saying, and ministers like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, they've been very clear. We want people out of Gaza. We don't want them to restart their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there is just as much genocide as shooting people in the streets or bombing them at night and throughout the day, right? Denying reconstruction efforts until they're dead or choose to leave or are forced out of their ancestral homes is still genocide. It is still inhumane. It is still a crime against humanity. So let's move. I mean, we're gonna. Okay, I'm only gonna have so much calm if we watch the full length of these videos. So I'm trying to get through them. But it's rough. If Winston Churchill were still alive today, he might have persuaded Parliament to attack America first before these MAGA regime attacks. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the world might have already been done at war if this was any time earlier in the future, for sure.
The remains of the last Israeli captive held in Gaza have been returned for burial, marking a pivotal moment in Israel's war and the first phase of Donald Trump's ceasefire plan. The body of police officer Ran Gavili was found in eastern Gaza. Israel had said it would reopen Gaza's southern Rafah crossing with Egypt once the search for his remains was completed. Rebuild.
And they say that they'll open the aid trucks from Egypt or from the Egyptian side once this body was recovered, and yet that in the video we just watched, they're not doing it. They're in fact strangling what little aid is coming through in the first place.
Building the strip is an important part of the ceasefire plan, but Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told Parliament the next phase will be the disarmament of Hamas and demilitarization and not Gaza's reconstruction.
Which is in violation of the agreement.
We are at the doorstep of the next phase. What is the next phase? The next phase is disarming Hamas and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip. The next phase is not reconstruction.
Which means we're going to make sure that whatever self-defense Palestinians have or remains is going to be taken from them so that we can just brutally murder the remaining members of Palestine to our heart's content without any concern that there will be any sort of return fire. Which is, again, why it is imperative that you never allow the state to disarm you. And in America, we're already facing calls for saying that you shouldn't bring guns to protests, and that if you have a gun during police operations, they have open season carte blanche to kill you, even though most states do in fact have stand your ground laws, which state that you can stand your fucking ground, and you don't in fact have a duty to retreat, even if it is from law enforcement. So what we're hearing here is the age-old tale of disarming the population so that the state can come in and massacre them and oppress them with impunity.
Hamas in Gaza will be disarmed. Gaza will be demilitarized. This will happen. It will happen as our mutual friend, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, said. It will happen the easy way, or it will happen the hard way. But it will happen.
So if it happens the hard way in the middle of a ceasefire, then that means even more violations of the ceasefire, and they're alleging that they're going to go ahead and just start massacring Palestinians again, even though all they have is tents, and if they're lucky in the first place.
Palestinians in Gaza are questioning Israel's commitment to the second phase of the US-backed ceasefire. Many of the requirements of phase one still haven't been met. Let's take a look at where things stand now. Hamas was required to return all living and deceased captives in Gaza in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. With Monday's recovery of the last captives' remains, Hamas has now fulfilled its side of the agreement. Under phase one, Israel was meant to stop all attacks on the Strip, but since the ceasefire came into effect, at least 484 Palestinians have been killed. Israeli forces also haven't retreated to the agreed-upon so-called Yellow Line. Instead, displaced Palestinians have been squeezed into ever-shrinking neighborhoods. The Rafah crossing was supposed to be reopened on both sides to facilitate the distribution of humanitarian aid, but it's still not clear when it will reopen. The ceasefire stipulated that full aid will be immediately sent into Gaza. However, Israel continues to restrict the entry of vital supplies, including shelters. Al Jazeera's correspondent Noor Auda has been covering the region extensively, joins us now in the studio. So, Noor, the Trump's peace plan talks about redeveloping Gaza for the benefit of people in its second point of that peace plan. Listening to what Netanyahu is saying, it doesn't sound like reconstruction is going to go ahead.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're on the same page. Netanyahu wants to leverage now his cooperation by opening the Rafah crossing, according to some reporting in this week, by conditioning reconstruction on disarmament, which means that this phase could stretch out for months, if not longer.
Now, anyway, Rafah was supposed to be opened, and it wasn't supposed to be preconditioned to stage two, right?
Absolutely.
So the Israelis
Absolutely.
And now we're getting into the part of the video where we're debating the semantics of the fact that Israel is violating the ceasefire, in as many ways that you could possibly violate a ceasefire. So it's just like the fact that ICE is murdering people in Minneapolis and there's very little being done about it, or that Trump continuously disregards the Supreme Court and other courts with impunity and nothing's being done about it. Israel continues to violate international law and agreed upon peace deals and ceasefires with other nations. And they continue to ignore them, continue to violate them, and there's no repercussions. We are living in a world where the most evil and cruel, malevolent people on earth are not being held accountable at all by people that are allegedly good, that are allegedly on the side of freedom and justice. So, yeah, sorry, the background sound, I was trying to play something just so that if there is some lulls in the stream, that there's a sound that keeps my microphone on, but I guess it's too loud, sorry. Hopefully I fixed it.
Well, joining us now is Omar Bartov, who is the Dean's Professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Brown University. He joins us from Cambridge in Massachusetts. Thanks very much for being with us. First of all, genocide is a legal term defined under international law. Can you just break that down for us and how you believe that applies to Israel's actions in Gaza over the last few years?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Tom. Genocide, as we see it, is based on the definition of genocide is based on the Genocide Convention of 1948, which speaks about actions that are taken with the intent of destroying a particular group, a national, ethnic, religious, or racial group, in whole or in part, as such. And the 5 categories of such actions, which include killing members of the group, creating conditions conducive to the destruction of the group, causing severe physical and mental harm, as well as preventing birth in that group. And these first 4 conditions apply to the case of Gaza. I would say, my understanding at least of what occurred there since October 7th, is that what Israel tried to carry out was ethnic cleansing. That is to remove as much of the population of Gaza as possible from the Strip. That as such, of course, failed, in part because people could not leave. And as a result of that became a genocidal operation, which, as you described, is an operation that caused severe harm to not only, of course, over 70,000 at a minimum people were killed and about 170,000 wounded, but also severe harm to the rest of the population, particularly to children, who compose about half of the population.
Yeah, now many who...
I mean, I don't have to be the one to tell you, right? This guy from Cambridge, Massachusetts, this Omer Bartov, who's a genocide scholar, Israeli genocide scholar, is breaking it down very clearly that what we are witnessing is in fact genocide by the definitions outlined since 1948. So when you have experts, including Israeli experts, highlighting how this is genocide by the legal definition of the word, no less, and all Western media can do is ignore it and not bring it up at all, it just it highlights why the Nazis were able to do what they were able to do, even with the technology of the era. It doesn't matter what technology you have. People like this, like these regimes that commit atrocities, have committed atrocities for as long as civilizations have existed. But the fact that we do have modern technology and the benefit of history and the benefit of international law, and that these things still happen unchallenged and unchecked, infuriating doesn't even begin to describe the emotion that I feel whenever we discuss these things. Speaking of which, modern technology being used or should be able to thwart genocide. Instead, it is being used as a weapon to support it.
So, guys, as of last week, the TikTok USA takeover is official, and many people are saying they long for the freedom of expression that we received under the Chinese Communist Party running of TikTok. There have been a lot of problems. Now, I'll just say up front, TikTok is saying that this all, Sagar, has to do with some sort of power outage at a data center, which I think when we give you the details here of the type of content that people are struggling to get circulating, you're going to be understandably skeptical about their explanations here. So this is one of the wildest ones. Let's put this up on the screen. And I've tested this personally. I had some friends and family who tested this as well. If you try to send a direct message that has the word Epstein in it, they will not let you send the word Epstein or any other content that includes Epstein. And so you can see that up on the screen. This is what you get. This is the exact same thing that happened when I tried it as well. You get this little exclamation point, and then it tells you that this is like a potential violation of community standards and that they're worried about the safety of their community. So that one is for sure. There have also been on Mac, if you go ahead and jump forward to the to E4, some of the reporting that we're getting from different users about the way that their anti-ICE posts in particular are being completely suppressed. So you have the Democrats here, Drop Site has seen their reporting on various topics be suppressed. Jessica Burbank is another one who has seen her TikTok views just absolutely fall off a cliff. I know the I've Had It ladies have experienced this as well. And it seems, if we put E5 up on the screen, it seems specifically to be tied to any sort of post about the shooting of Alex Pretty in Minneapolis. Any criticism of ICE, sort of broader Trump criticism as well, seems to be not getting pushed into the algorithm whatsoever. So that type of content from creators with large followings is getting next to no views when they post it. So,
and remember, this was because TikTok was a Chinese company being used to spy on and suppress free speech in America. And now free speech in America, or at least such as it was on TikTok, is literally being suppressed entirely, where keywords like Epstein are not even being allowed to be sent in chat. Like, I don't even begin to understand how people, I mean, and there has been a lot of backlash, right? There have been a lot of people that just stopped using TikTok overnight because of this. I don't know what the numbers are. Let's see. How many users have left TikTok since new ownership? So, 150% uninstall surge. Which that's not a number per se that like matters, I guess. Because say if the number was 15 and it jumped, or I guess 10 was an easier number. If it was uninstalls of 10 a day and they went up 150%, that means they went to 15, right? But suffice to say, that is significant. I mean, it's still a number worth talking about, and you know that just goes to show how, you know, just like with Twitter, the fact that it turned into a Nazi cesspool and people left it in droves, and now they're trying to find new and more imaginative ways to pay for it and give it value by forcing you to pay for a blue check mark or a gold check mark. It's the same thing that AI is doing, by the way, is they're trying to do ads in the AI because it's not making money because people are disgusted with how fucked up it is and what they're doing with it. So, you know, it is, there is a lot of schadenfreude here to be had that TikTok is fucking around and finding out, especially because they have Zionist board members and especially because they're hiding terms and denying terms like Epstein and anti-ICE messages and genocide with Israel and all that fun stuff. So, you know, there is a lot to be said. There is definitely a lot to be said about this. So,
as I said before, I can put E3 up on the screen. TikTok is claiming this has to do with a power outage. You know, I'm not, Sagar, a technical wizard here. So perhaps there is some way in which a power outage magically creates, you know, algorithmic suppression of content that just happens to be unfavorable in the eyes of the new, you know, Ellison-backed ownership. Perhaps there is some technical explanation for this, but this seems pretty hard to believe given the specific things that are being blocked, suppressed, and censored.
Yeah, I just don't get it. So here's the statement. They say suffered a cascading systems failure that caused multiple bugs, such as creators having difficulty posting new video, seeing content showing 0 views, marked a rocket. But how would that explain the DM's issue? I did see
the Epstein thing is
right. The Epstein thing is just, I mean, that's the craziest one. I'm glad we started with that.
Undeniable.
But I mean, I did see some NFL creators who were telling me that they had the same problem with 0 views. So it is possible, you know, the 0 view thing. If I had to guess, what has happened is that they've had a rollout of their so-called like political community guidelines, and that it's just clunky in terms of the way that they're rolling out their code under like the new guidelines or under the new ownership. And they're still trying to figure out like de-ranking and all of that, or how to rank, you know, such content.
Which is even crazier, right? Because if you let tech people do this, you know, the people that were in charge of TikTok in the first place and had community guidelines in place, it wouldn't be hard to, you know, throttle back political speak or at least demonetize it or something, right? If that was the goal, we're just not going to monetize politics on our platform. YouTube went out of its way to do that, and a lot of independent news networks got fucked because of it. And unironically, we're on YouTube. We're on Twitch, but using YouTube where that is happening, or happening less now or something. I don't really remember. Actually, we can look that up. Why not? Let's. Why don't I have my Google? Where's my search? Okay. My typing. Okay, so they did fix it. All right. As of late 2025 and early 2026, it's taken to reinstate creators who were banned for election misinformation, has erased restrictions on content discussing sensitive topics. So they did do it, and then they undid it because they realized they were about to lose their platform as well. So, all of which is to say, censorship never lasts. Or rather, no, that's not true. Censorship does last, but platforms that exist to make money don't last if they continue to use censorship or continue to push extremely hateful rhetoric. And the fact that Twitter is still hanging on by a thread is kind of shocking, and kind of resisting that trend, because Elon Musk is the wealthiest person on Earth and is probably single-handedly keeping it afloat, which, you know, considering we also know that most of the interactions on Twitter are bots because it was confirmed it was bots, and the fact that most of the right-wing extremists that are commenting are in Bangladesh and China and other countries, not in America, you know, it just kind of goes to show, like, this is all smoke and mirrors. It is literally the guy behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. So,
Najat Jadala is lucky she wasn't killed. Israeli settlers invaded her land, and when she confronted them, they beat her severely.
I'm in pain. They beat me. It hurts so much.
The settlers came in numbers. They brought their sheep with them to graze on Palestinian land. Najat's daughter recalls what happened next.
She screamed, she shouted. Then he kicked her and he struck her head with a rock, causing bleeding and skull fracture.
The settlers called reinforcements, and the entire Jadala family, Najat and her children, found themselves under siege. The door was smashed in, and blood was spilled. The family is Christian, but they say this made no difference to the attackers. But it didn't end there. Najat's sons were...
This is happening in the West Bank, which means whatever happened in Gaza is a prelude to what's probably about to happen in the West Bank. And the worst part of it is that Israel is separating the violence from Gaza to West Bank and just encouraging the settlers themselves to commit the atrocities. And again, settlers are attacking people in their own homes, on their own lands, and then forcing them out of their own homes and their own lands and literally just squatting on those properties. It cannot be stressed enough that Israel as a state is an illegal occupying force that is literally engaging in settler colonialism and ethnic cleansing. On top of that, they are actively attacking and threatening Christians in Palestine. They are literally attacking Christians. So this whole threat to Christianity, this war on Christians that the right wing in every country wants to talk about, is literally happening at the hands of Israel. And not a single person is mentioning that. So, just wanted to point that little tidbit out.
Were later summoned by the Israeli army. One was accused of attacking a settler. His family says it was self-defense.
Oh, and then of course, when the Israeli army arrives, they arrest the victims for assaulting settlers despite, being on their own property and land.
When they first saw him, they beat him brutally, and then they arrested him. This is our land, and we're gonna stay in our land.
The Jadala family tend to Najat, praying for her recovery. But despite the violence they've endured, they remain unshaken in their determination to continue their resistance. Fintan Monaghan, Al Jazeera.
I mean, kudos to them for resisting an occupying force that is actively trying to kill them whilst trying to just survive and just simply live. That's all it is. They are simply living their lives, and they are being attacked and brutalized by Israeli settlers and the military when they finally show up. Now, I know this is Worldwide Wednesdays, and I keep making comparisons to what's happening in Minneapolis, but that's where we are. That is exactly the stage that we are beginning to face, is a state occupying our communities and brutalizing our neighbors with violence and death. The comparison. Sorry, I guess when I click on this screen and do my switching to the screen, sometimes it does whatever tab is open as well. So, anywho, what Israel is doing in the West Bank is functionally the same thing that ICE is doing in Minneapolis. Now, we could even argue that what Israel did in the first few months of Gaza is what's happening in Minneapolis. Well, you can't compare that. They were firing rockets and airstrikes in Gaza. That's not the same thing. All right, fair. Cool. However, they were using brutal military tactics, right? They were corralling citizens and violating their rights, and they engaged in violence against civilians for no reason and indiscriminately arrested them for resisting, which is exactly what's happening in Minneapolis right now. The only reason why there aren't airstrikes and wanton killing is because, well, that is how you get a revolution, right? That's exactly how you get the Second Civil War. But all of which is to say, the same tactics and the same mentality is being carried out in America. And in some places, it's much quieter than others, but make no mistake, It is still insidious. It's insidious to the degree of how it is in the West Bank, or it's insidious to the degree that it is in Minneapolis. But make no mistake, it is happening the exact same way Israel is committing atrocities against Palestinians. So, let's carry on with our...
According to Trump's plan, this area is going to...
The headline that they chose to use, too. The master plan. As you can see, they're turning Gaza straight up into a resort town. And I don't know. I guess that might be the entire Gaza Strip. That doesn't seem right. That must be like a certain part, like Rafah City. Yeah, I think this is just for Rafah City. So they're already drawing up plans to turn Rafah City into a resort town. You know, while the Palestinians who live there are starving to death, freezing to death, and worse under Israeli occupation. Oh, so again, master plan. Final solution. Master plan. It's literally the same language. Literally the same language. We don't have to make any stretches whatsoever to compare Nazi Germany to what's happening because they are using the same fucking language.
To be tourism facilities, highways, transportation to the Palestinians. But what we also need to know is this area is all lands of Palestinians where these are their houses, these are their belongings. And according to Palestinians, they're saying that this is another way of how they're going to be deprived from their houses. These are all residential houses and housing units to thousands of Palestinians that are currently displaced. Palestinians are wishing and counting the days they can come back to their houses, remove the rubble, and rebuild, but they never imagined that this is going to be the plan for Gaza.
Which is the whole point, right? The carrot, right? Oh, we'll let you rebuild. Oh, we'll let you rebuild, but you have to do this, 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 and this until eventually they're either killed, massacred, or displaced from their lands, and then it's turned into the resorts. The plan was never to allow Palestinians to return home or to rebuild their homes. The plan was always to remove them from their homes, either by force or by necessity. And at the rate things are going, they are choosing full eradication of the Palestinian people rather than forced relocation, because that would take time, money, and resources that the Israelis don't think Palestinians are worth.
So the photos of New Gaza and the map have been circulating online since yesterday, since Jared Kushner announced this plan and this new Gaza. Let's talk to some Palestinians in Gaza here and see what they think about these plans. What do they think about the future of New Gaza?
بالنسبة لموضوع الإعمار اللي حيصير.
The reconstruction plan that is announced won't compensate Palestinians on what they lost and need. They will give you an apartment in one of the assigned areas, and your property won't stay yours. This is totally unacceptable.
I.e., they're creating a Warsaw ghetto for Palestinians to live in temporarily and no other compensation. This is factually what the Nazis did to Jewish Germans by sending them to the Warsaw ghetto in Poland and telling them to live there, and then still rounded them up from time to time, sending them to Dachau and Auschwitz to die in concentration camps. He's right. This is unacceptable because historically it only leads to one outcome. And it's immoral, it's unethical, it's reprehensible to displace an entire people. Yeah, fine, that aspect alone, but to also not compensate them for their losses and claiming that you're being displaced temporarily so that you can come back eventually. They're not even attempting to hide the fact that we are blatantly stealing your land, your property, and your heritage, and telling you to go fuck yourself in the process. There is nothing else to describe what this is.
What I wish for is first the removal of the toxic substances in the rubble, and I want the reconstruction of my house in the same way it used to be.
This map was announced by the Peace Council. The Peace Council took away our rights as Palestinians and our rights of owning our land. The reconstruction that we want is going back home, to the place of the rubble of my home, to rebuild what was bombed.
After talking to Palestinians, according to them, this plan is totally unacceptable because it's going to force this reconstruction new Gaza plan on them, where they do not want to be forced or even deprived from their land and their housing. This is one of the examples where this Palestinian family started reconstructing their home despite the fact that the Israeli authorities did not let any construction materials inside the Gaza Strip since the ceasefire started. And another thing we need to know is, for example, here where we're standing is here on the map in the northern Gaza Strip, and it doesn't even exist where this area is going to be industrial. All of these thousands of Palestinians who are waiting to come back to their houses and to start rebuilding will be deprived from this. There's a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, but what we need to know is Palestinians definitely want to rebuild their houses the way they want to rebuild them. Hind al-Khudari, Al Jazeera, Gaza, Palestine.
I mean, if this video didn't hit the point home clearly enough, I don't really understand. Like I don't know how else to explain it. The peace plan, or the peace board, or whatever the fuck it's called, the League of Villains, literally has a plan to turn Palestine into a resort, or the Gaza Strip into a resort, and displace every single person without any compensation, without any consideration for them whatsoever. Again, America did this to the indigenous populations during Manifest Destiny. They did this to the Chinese during the Chinese Exclusion Act, after the Chinese built our fucking railroads and bridges. We did this to Mexicans. We did this to Irish. We did this to Italians. We did this to every single fucking demographic that has ever came to America. We've done this to every indigenous population on our westward journey. And now countries like Nazi Germany, like Israel, Zionist Israel, are going out of their ways to follow in our ethnic cleansing footsteps. We were committing genocide and ethnic cleansing before it was defined. They're like, we were the bad guys before the bad guys were defined. So, to see this happen in modern times, literally happening before our very eyes, and the news doesn't even cover it? Like, literally, the news has not mentioned this to anyone at all. I have not seen one news article discussing these plans from the perspective of Palestine, just talking about the Board of Peace. There are many reasons why I am running for Congress. There are many, many reasons why I want to fight back against this administration and this regime, and why I think our Congress is filled with cowards. But what is happening in Palestine is definitely on the top 10 list, top 3 list of why I cannot sit idly by and watch this continue without doing a single thing about it. Once I am in Congress with your support and your community's support, I will have the influence and power, and dare I say it, the authority and mandate to do something, to say something, and to stand up while others are unable to. We have to save Palestinians before the Palestinians become a footnote in history. And at the rate things are happening, and at the rate things are going, and at the rate in which Western countries and the United Nations are reacting, that's exactly what's going to happen to Palestinians. And it will literally be our fault for doing nothing and just saying, what else can we possibly do?
Today is an incredibly important day, and the first thing I'll say is how sad I am not to be sat alongside my great-grandmother, and how sad I am not to be joined by Harry Ulmer, who passed away only a few weeks ago, and my condolences to Julia and her family. He was a great man and a great inspiration of mine, and I went to Poland with him in 2023. My great-grandmother's story touched the hearts and minds of so many millions of people while she was alive. Her going out, sharing that story, the harrowing things that she saw in the hell of Auschwitz-Birkenau, where her mother, her younger sister, her youngest brother were murdered. But I think that today the theme of Holocaust Memorial Day is bridging the generations, and it's more important than ever, as you say, when the number of schools marking this has seemingly gone down, when clearly in the consciousness of the human mind, what led to the Holocaust, that anti-Semitism is being forgotten because we're seeing that anti-Semitism resurgent in society again. I think it's important that we preserve those stories. So I do that through social media. I ensure that whilst hate on social media is so rife and where it can spread so easily, we have those true survivor stories, even whilst they're passed away. Those videos, I'm posting them every single day to ensure that people can remember my great-grandmother, not only for the incredible woman that she was, but for the incredibly important messages that she shared about hate, about where that hate, if left unchecked and unchallenged, can lead to. And that's to places like Auschwitz-Birkenau, that's to a person like my great-grandmother being reduced to a number, A10572. That was the number that she was given in Auschwitz-Birkenau, a permanent reminder of the Nazis' crimes against humanity. And those are things which I try to share every day on social media, along with the light, the fact that you can rebuild, that you can get through any darkness in life, and that you can smile and that you can build a family. My great-grandmother had 10 grandchildren, 38 great-grandchildren, of which I'm a proud member, and one great-great-grandchild in her final year.
Okay. So you have that guy waxing nostalgic over his grandmother, a survivor of Auschwitz-Birkenau, which, yes, absolutely wax nostalgic, because what that woman went through, no person should have ever gone through, and the Holocaust was, in fact, something to be reminded of every single moment of every single day, and that we should embrace the words never again to mean never again. And the fact that schools continue to wane on the remembrance of the Holocaust or teaching of the Holocaust, and yes, the rise of anti-Semitism, those are all extremely terrible things. Those are not great things to see in society, forgetting and moving past and beyond the Holocaust and not trying to remind ourselves of the horrors that it caused. Meanwhile, in the same breath, highlighting how we cannot allow these atrocities to happen again. Meanwhile, in the same breath, saying how, you can rebuild, and it is important, and it is this, and, to speak out against hate. Meanwhile, all across the world, including in Britain, where this is happening, right? The British Broadcasting Channel. The British Parliament is labeling Palestinian protesters, Palestinian supporters and sympathizers as terrorists. The Palestinian people are the new Jewish people, are the modern-day Jews of Nazi Germany. So Palestinians are being persecuted. Defending Palestine is being equated to terrorism. And the people of Palestine, as we just discussed for the past hour, are being ethnically cleansed off the map in broad daylight in 4K. And not a single fucking word for them? Or any sort of recognition or self-introspection for the atrocities being committed by Israel? Like, I hate to say it, but I think the reason why people are forgetting about the Holocaust and not celebrating it is because the Nazis won the long game. Yeah, they lost the war, and they were slaughtered by the thousands after the Nuremberg trials. But Operation Paperclip and similar absorbed them into society. And after decades and generations of spreading hate and misinformation and undermining this, that, and the other, and regaining a platform in modern times, the AFD, the MAGA, right? All of these fascist platforms are regurgitating Nazi rhetoric, right? Disparaging immigrants, disparaging the neurodiverse, disparaging the queers, right? Outright anti-Semitism. And then they get elected. And then they get elected into presidents and prime ministers and foreign leaders, right? Foreign ministers and such. And then they pass policies for education and remembrance to disregard the Holocaust, to whitewash it, to sanitize what happened, or to disregard it altogether. So, to decry these things in a vacuum without bringing up the context of how our societies have been falling to the right-wing grift for generations, and the resurgence of Nazi-style beliefs and rhetoric for generations until the present where it has become normalized again, is a grave disservice to the conversation in the first place. So let's hear what this lady has to say.
Father sadly passed away quite suddenly, actually, only 12 days ago. And he was educating pretty much until the end of his life. He absolutely would not refuse to go to any event, to any school, to any organization to speak and tell about his horrors and what he went through. But really his story is a story of survival in the truest sense of the word. He never wanted to be defined by what happened to him in his early years and the trauma that he went through and the murder of all his family, pretty much every member.
Right. So, again, pretty much every member of his family was murdered. How many Jewish bloodlines were erased by the Germans? How many of them were reduced down to one? Remember, the entire Jewish population of Earth back then was around 30 or 40 million, and it was reduced down to 14 million after World War II was all said and done. Right? And now the same shit is happening in Palestine, and nobody wants to draw the conclusions, the same connections, and then call it anti-Semitism when you try? I think fucking not.
Of his family. He was always an incredibly positive person who wanted to look forward and build a life and build a future for the family that he created. He was very keen that the legacy that he began and that we now have to take over the mantle of is continued. He was a particular advocate of going to schools and educating anywhere and everywhere in the country, and he had been very involved over the last 9 years with a project called Echo Eternal, which got children from all over the country, many of whom had never even met or seen a Jewish person before, to engage in the Holocaust through the medium of dance and music.
The Holocaust is unique in human history in the scale, the systematic nature of it. Auschwitz-Birkenau, where over 1.1 million people were murdered. My great-grandmother, a Hungarian survivor, over 500,000 murdered in the period of 6 weeks. Something like that had never been seen before in history. But not just that. The Holocaust...
That's literally not true. And I get it because I was one of the people who would say as well that the systemic erasure of people has never been done, because that's what we were taught in Western schools, in Western society, that the Holocaust was the first time ethnic cleansing was systemic. But that's simply not true. The United States of America systemically murdered tribes, systemically spread disease in tribal communities, systemically murdered, raped, and pillaged across the entire West. And then same thing with the transatlantic slave trade. That didn't happen in a vacuum. The indigenous people didn't just give up their lands. They were killed for it. They were massacred for it, down to their infants and their elderly. That's why there are mass graves being uncovered every single day all across the country. So sure, fine, we didn't have gas chambers. We weren't necessarily shipping them by the trainload to these concentration camps. But make no mistake, the United States of America was committing genocide long before it was defined. Sure, there have been other places where it happened too, right? The Spanish Inquisition, the eradication of the Aztec, Incan, and Mayan empires, that entire leadership structure, the thousands of indigenous Latin Americans that met their deaths at the hands of Spaniards, right? We can go back further. We can go to Genghis Khan and the slaughter of millions of Asian people from China all the way to, how far did they make it? They made it into Russia, and then east, I think it just stopped right of the Alps or something like that. Like, Genghis Khan committed genocide multiple times over, right? And how many times throughout Chinese history were there massacres in the thousands and the millions, just wiping out villages and cities during the Warring States period or anything else, right? So no, this isn't unique. It wasn't the first time, but it was the first time that a country was held accountable for committing these atrocities, defining these atrocities, and then establishing law to prevent them ever happening again, except, well, it turned right around and started happening over and over again by the decade. And now we're having it happen in modern times in Palestine. This guy is holding this interview a day ago. It only had 7,000 views, go figure. So this interview happened a day ago, or maybe a few days. It doesn't matter. It happened during the height of what we are seeing, the epicenter of genocide occurring in Palestine. And he is just unironically talking about the Holocaust as a singular event in history that has never been repeated. Not apartheid, not any of the other atrocities committed by countries since then, including the United States. No, just the Holocaust. That's the only genocide that's ever happened. Not the one that's currently happening in Palestine. Not the one that's currently happening in Sudan. Not the ones that are currently happening elsewhere. No. Only the Holocaust.
Of course, it's important today, and we can see that just by the statistics of anti-Semitism over the past 3 years. I'm sat here as a British Jew in 2026 on Holocaust Memorial Day, and how shocking is it to say that I don't know one single friend of mine who's 22 years old. In fact, I don't know one single British Jew who hasn't considered their future in this country, not because they fear that they might be slaughtered on the streets, because they fear what this country might be for their grandchildren, for their great-grandchildren. And they see this anti-Semitism, this anti-Jewish hatred, which didn't start in 1933 and end in 1945 with the Holocaust and with the whim of one dictator. It's been throughout history, and it mutates, and it's a virus. And that virus is infecting society again. And the fact that people are worried about community tensions, I think that speaks to a whole nother part of the social fabric of this country, but it clearly shows that there are people who think that the Holocaust is some sort of thing that can be played with, and that's even something which we can just discard as if the Holocaust couldn't happen again. Of course, there won't be gas chambers again, but violent anti-Semitism is returning. We've seen that in Bondi, with Manchester, and these are the direct cause of words which are again prevalent in society.
I think that final point that he was making, I'll give him that much credit. He's talking about another Holocaust directly from the perspective of targeting Jews. I get that. There's probably not going to be another one of those. I don't think there's going to be a global outlash against the Jewish population or Jewish practitioners. Largely because of the Holocaust, right? That's a line that just can't be crossed, right? We can admit that. But the problem is that he is correct about the rise of anti-Semitism, but he's, again, talking about it in a vacuum. It's not just anti-Semitism. It's discrimination. It's anti-other. It's the fact that white supremacy is still dominant or is making an extremely ugly turn from the way that it was back then. It's returning to the past, right? And white supremacy is not unique to America. That's the European way. It's why there are still Latin American countries that still believe the lighter your skin, the more beautiful and pure that you are. Because that was brought by the Spaniards. Because they themselves were ruled by the Moors for 800 years? And that blackness, that dark skin, that Muslim faith was eking on the true Spaniard soul and mind for centuries. And then once they finally cast the Moors out of Spain, they tried to regain their Europeanness, their whiteness, their authenticity. And then they brought that mentality to the New World. While, of course, slaughtering and pillaging and plundering their way across it. So I think it's a greater disservice to talk about the Holocaust in a vacuum and not talk about how the rise of anti-everything and the death throes of white supremacy is what's causing the rise of discrimination and anti-whatever demographic. That's what needs to be discussed. I think it's more dangerous to talk about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism as a vacuum, as a monopoly of discrimination, when there is a plethora of discrimination abounding across the world right now, but especially in Europe and Western nations like America, where these anti-discriminatory rhetoric are on the rise to the point where ICE agents are literally invading American communities and murdering white people, of all things, in broad daylight, in the name of tackling illegal immigration. And now they're going to target Springfield, Ohio, because of the Somali population, a people who have done nothing to this country, the community who has done nothing but try and thrive and provide to the community and this country. It's that anti-foreigner, xenophobia, discrimination, bigotry, whatever word most accurately encompasses it all. That's the threat, which leads to genocide and ethnic cleansing, regardless of the demographic that's getting targeted. Because at the end of the day, the Nazis would not have stopped at the Jewish population. They wouldn't have stopped with the Jewish population. That's how far they got. The Nazis only got as far as targeting the LGBT community, especially transgender and gay, the disabled, the Romani, and the Jewish population, and then, dissenters, right? But as far as demographics go, they only got so far. Had they been able to continue, they would have eradicated Africans. They would have eradicated Latin Americans. They would have eradicated Middle Easterners and Asians, right? Like, they would have eventually fought the Japanese for supremacy. That was a thing that was going to happen. And America is targeting all non-Caucasian demographics at once under the auspices of immigration. That is the only possible outcome for those kinds of activities. White supremacy or ethnic cleansing for the given demographic. Those are the only outcomes. The only outcomes. Oh. Holocaust Memorial Day, school children speak with survivors using AI. I don't know if I could think of anything more disrespectful than putting a Holocaust survivor into an AI. Okay.
Today marks Holocaust Memorial Day, a day for remembering the 6 million people who were murdered by the Nazi regime over 80 years ago. As part of the commemorations, the Holocaust Educational Trust has launched a new project where school children can speak to survivors using AI. John Maguire reports.
Susan, can you tell me about your childhood in Hungary?
We were only 2 children, my brother and myself. But we had a wonderful extended family.
It may seem strange to ask a virtual Susan questions about her long life when sitting beside the real one, but she wanted to demonstrate how she'll be able to answer questions long after she's gone.
Well, I'm just overwhelmed with the technology and the science and whatever it involves. Oh, remarkable.
If they are going to record her answers, that's one thing. But the fact that AI can be corrupted and, I don't know, re-fucking-programmed with, voice controls, and if she's turning over the likeness of her voice and her image, then there is literally no limit to how she could be manipulated now or in the future when talking about the Holocaust. She could literally be turned into supporting it for all we know. And given the trajectory of the technocrats and the technocratic empires that are forming across the globe, that it might not be too far away.
Testimony 360 project gives school children the chance to immerse themselves in a Holocaust survivor's life story. Using virtual reality headsets, they can walk around places from Susan's life, including the Nazi concentration camps where she was taken as a young teenager.
This environment that they placed me in Auschwitz, appearing every morning stark naked in front of Dr. Mengele, I knew his name, and looking at our body, who's lost so much weight and who's still able to do some work. I can't describe this to you. How inhuman the conditions were. So I crawled out. I couldn't walk anymore. And like I said, I was dying, I think. It was just so inhuman. So not even frightening anymore. Why did they do that to us? And the Nazis, so many of them, educated, they wanted to kill us all. And they practically did.
Yeah. She was filmed answering around 1,000 questions, and using artificial intelligence can respond to whatever the students ask.
To be able to explore the Holocaust through a lens of a person, this really humanises that history. It's so hard to comprehend the Holocaust when we're just looking at statistics. 6 million people, how can we ever understand that? But to see someone...
That was probably the most soul-crushing 60 to 90 seconds I have ever heard about, a Holocaust survivor, right? And what kills me the most is that we have 2.5 years of video evidence, of video testimony in 4K from modern day genocide survivors. Children begging for food, eating trash, surviving the most horrible conditions, wondering when they can go home, wondering when they can go back to normal. Parents and everything else under the sun asking the same questions. What did we do to deserve this? What kills me is I get that these are all videos about the Holocaust. I get that Holocaust Memorial Day. I really, truly get that. I understand and I respect it. And I agree that we should talk about the Holocaust Memorial Day and we should emphasize this. However, no matter how much we talk about the Holocaust, whether outside of the Memorial Day or otherwise, if we aren't genuinely talking about the ongoing genocide in Palestine, then what's the point? We're obviously not teaching the lesson. We actually don't want anything to come from it. We just want to pat ourselves on the back and say we did a good deed by remembering the atrocities of the past while turning a blind eye to what's happening right now. God knows how many Palestinian children and families are dying right now while I eat bread in stress. I am stress eating, right? While I am stress eating, how many children in Palestine are dying? Did die. If we cannot talk about the Holocaust in the same breath that we can talk about what's going on in Palestine, then we should then you shouldn't be talking about the Holocaust at all. You are being disingenuous. And you have no authenticity, and you certainly don't have the moral or ethical standing to speak about these issues in the first place. And to suggest otherwise, or to say otherwise, or to talk about the Holocaust and the struggle of the Jewish population even in today, while Zionist Israel commits the very same atrocities in almost the exact same way, that kind of hypocrisy, I cannot stomach.
Turning now to the dollar, there's some major movement in the U.S. economy.
I think this was meant for tomorrow. So, Anna, do this video for tomorrow.
Saudi Arabia has announced a deal with the Sudanese government to start buying its gold. We put up F1 here. So last year, something like 99% of Sudanese gold was sold to the United Arab Emirates, which is basically a crime family that masquerades as a country that engages in a lot of money laundering and other services that are useful to Western governments and crime syndicates. About most of that gold, like the bulk of it, was sold through the black market, but even the gold that was sold through the regular market went through the UAE. Sudan is one of the countries that has kind of the greatest kind of stores of gold remaining. Gold prices over the last year have surged. Like if you were if you were a gold bug, the last 5, 10,
week
15,
has been
20
great.
it's been a good run for you for a very long time.
Yeah.
So now Saudi Arabia, as it's going through its hot war and its fallout with the UAE, is announcing that it's going to send it's going to purchase Sudanese gold and put it through its own kind of processing facilities that it has in Saudi Arabia. This is all part of the crack-up between these one-time allies in the Gulf that is entirely reshaping relations everywhere, from Africa into Asia. The UAE is backing that's the United Arab Emirates. They're backing what's called the RSF, Rapid Support Forces, which is, if you remember the Janjaweed from the Darfur conflict back in 20 years ago, they're basically a derivative of the Janjaweed, which carried out a genocide then. They're doing it.
The RSF is the ones that are murdering children in their schools by the hundreds, by the dozens, and then pillaging, plundering, murdering, and raping the women as they flee for their lives.
Again, now the UAE.
To be fair, there are some accounts of the Sudanese military doing the same thing, but the RSF is doing it as if it's their brand.
Is arming them to the hilt. You put up F2. They even got into a border clash with Chad and are sort of apologizing for that. They're realizing they're kind of overstepping things a little bit here as their patrons are coming under intense pressure. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have teamed up to offer like $1 billion plus weapons package to the Sudanese army. If that comes through and the RSF's supply chains are cut off, it's going to be difficult for them to keep carrying out the assault that they're under, or the offensive that is underway in Sudan now.
Well, and give us the big picture ripple effect potentially of this as well. We can put the next element on the screen. This is from Reuters, and this was just from Monday. India UAE signed $3 billion liquid natural gas deal, agree to boost trade and defense ties at leaders' meeting. That's the Reuters headline, Ryan. The international, I mean, it's crazy to see it's not crazy, it's predictable, but a proxy conflict like this bring in even bigger players than just Saudi and UAE. Right. I mean, it's all over, pitting people all over the world against each other in a proxy conflict that is primarily between them.
Yeah, exactly. This war between Saudi and the UAE really started in Yemen and then rolled into into Sudan, where in Sudan it has taken the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. But yeah, to now rope in India, the way to think about it is that, Pakistan and India, oil and water could not hate each other anymore. And so as Saudi Arabia has linked up with Pakistan and tightened its relationship a couple, was it weeks ago, maybe a month ago or more, inked a security agreement with Pakistan, which gives Saudi Arabia then the kind of nuclear umbrella of the Pakistani nuclear weapons. So that they're tightening their relationship. And so then as Saudi Arabia and the UAE fall out, the UAE links up with India. They also have ideological sympathy with each other. The UAE, ironically, is as like hostile to Islam as a quote unquote Muslim country could possibly be. Like they're out funding Tommy Robinson to go around like attacking Muslims. Like they're constantly whipping up Islamophobia in Europe. Like this is the UAE. Like I know, like if you're just coming to this fresh, you're like, wait a minute, what?
Well, yeah, it's strange,
they're
right?
doing what?
So several points to be made, and I was chewing and eating and stressing and trying to listen here, but this is supposed to be about the Sudan crisis, right? Especially the gold. And yet it's a proxy war between Saudi Arabia, India, Pakistan, and the UAE, right? And it's India, UAE versus Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And it just goes to show that all of these global conflicts that are occurring are all over the same shit that they've always been over, which is some natural resources or other, right? And of course, the oldest one that they were fighting over being gold, right? For as long as gold has been considered valuable, there have been wars fought over control of gold mines, bullion, whatever have you. And now we're just adding natural gas, lithium, uranium, rare earth metals, and whatever else, because technology demands that we use those materials. It always boils down to the same shit, and yet it's the victims that always suffer the most, right? Because this proxy war between four large nations is devastating the Sudan. And the Sudan could arguably be the wealthiest nation on earth because of the gold that it possesses. Right? $35 trillion dollars worth of gold, or is it 35 trillion tons of gold? How much gold does Sudan have? Production of 64 to 70 metric tons. 1.5 billion in revenue. As the third largest producer of gold in Africa, behind South Africa and Ghana. Mind you, those three countries are ridiculously poor compared to Western powers who are trying to control that gold. I want to know what the gold reserves is. That's how am I not asking the right question here? How much gold to be mined does Sudan have? $1,100 tons? That doesn't seem right, but I thought we were talking about like trillions of dollars or billions of dollars, something like that. Honestly, it doesn't fundamentally matter because at the end of the day, it's about plundering Sudanese wealth and giving it to literally anybody else. Africa is, by rights, the wealthiest continent on Earth. It has the greatest amount of natural resources, minerals, and precious metals out of any other country or any other continent on Earth. And yet every single African country has a GDP that is a fraction of any given Western country. And the fact that nobody seems to ever want to talk about that is significant. I'm back from protesting ICE. My feet are pretty much about to fall off. Buddy, I'm glad you're with us, and I'm glad you didn't get killed, because that's a very real possibility nowadays. In fact, we're going to probably be protesting ICE in Springfield, Ohio this weekend as well. So, in anticipation of their arrival later next month. It's kind of nuts that we have to protest about our own government invading our own communities. That's fucking insane. And crazy also how that ties into Middle Eastern countries and India causing conflict in Africa for control over African natural resources through proxy wars. It's the same fucking thing. I live in Wisconsin. Okay, good. So I guess it's not as prevalent in Wisconsin yet, because I haven't heard of any named operations going on in Wisconsin, but still, ICE feels as though they can get away with whatever they want nowadays. So, protesting in front of them, risky. Protesting in front of City Hall, also risky. They might arrest you, but less risky than in front of ICE. So I guess this is
India and the EU.
So the previous video with breaking points is like the more in-depth discussion, and this is the Spark Notes version.
Began talking about a trade deal nearly 20 years ago. Now they say they have one.
Prime Minister, distinguished friend.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. India and the EU have a trade deal. That's impressive.
We did it. We delivered the mother of all deals. We are creating a market of 2 billion people. And this is the tale of two giants, the world's second and fourth largest economies. Two giants who choose partnership in a true win-win fashion.
The Indian Prime Minister sees the deal as a new blueprint for shared prosperity in an increasingly uncertain world.
We are seeing a lot of turmoil today in the global order. At such a time, the partnership between India and the European Union will strengthen stability in international systems.
India is one of the world's largest textile exporters, with around 1/6 of its annual product heading to the EU, worth more than $7 billion each year. Annual trade between India and the EU represents more than $214 billion. Many European exports are in the form of chemicals, machinery and pharmaceuticals. Tariffs on all will be radically reduced within the next 10 years.
But those on cars will drop the most, down to as little as 10%, for an annual limit of around 250,000 vehicles. Germany's motor manufacturers say this represents a competitive boost for them, while ministers say it's a great opportunity for growth. But it's not in force yet, and there is one potential problem, because this deal will have to be ratified by India, the European Council, and the European Parliament.
And the MEP's approval is not guaranteed, after they voted to delay a similar deal with the Mercosur countries of Latin America last week. Dominic Kane, Al Jazeera, Berlin.
Wait a minute. The European Union had the opportunity to have ridiculously improved trade deals with Latin America, who are also sitting on an actual, excuse the pun, gold mine of natural resources, and turned it down? Like, it doesn't even make sense. Western powers refuse to work with brown countries, except for, I guess, India being the fourth largest economy or something like that. That's crazy to me. They have been here. My relative says he saw a bunch of Hispanic people locked up when he was arrested. Oh, wonderful. So we can pretty much assume ICE is in any fairly large populated city in America. I don't know what the population of Milwaukee is, but there have been reports that ICE was even in Lancaster, Ohio, which has a population of 45,000. So if they're in towns as small as that, then they're probably everywhere in America, except for like the most rural places where they can just look at the family register and be like, yeah, there aren't a single foreigner in these places. It's disgusting, the sheer amount of white supremacy that's being engaged upon. And the fact that Pam Bondi specifically demanded voter rolls and privacy information of Minnesotans to tell ICE to leave is literally just blatantly saying, hey, we want the demographic information of your cities and their addresses and their identifying information so that we can just Kristallnacht them into death. And yeah, that shouldn't be lost on anybody.
How dare he say we weren't on the front line? How dare he?
Why are we still fostering a special relationship with Donald Trump and the US when his recent actions prove that he can't be trusted?
Well, it's been pretty lively this week, hasn't it, with Donald Trump? Greg, I'm going to come to you first, because I think you probably have a greater understanding.
I mean, to be fair, that is the question we all want to know. Why the fuck is anybody dealing with America right now? At all. Period.
Or certainly sympathy with Donald Trump's position. You know, we've had a week where he's threatened to take over Greenland, he's threatened to impose tariffs, he's insulted NATO allies. I just want to tell you about something he's also said this evening about NATO allies in an interview with Fox News. He talked about NATO not coming to help the United States if it needed them. And he said, we've never needed them. They say they sent some troops to Afghanistan and this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's a mistake. And look, the president is very unfiltered and often doesn't have his facts perfectly.
Is this guy British? Because he sounds like an American. So I'm a little confused. I was not expecting that accent on that panel.
We wind up. We all know that not only was the UK fighting alongside of us in both of those wars, but so was Denmark. And so,
wait,
in fact,
hold on. Greg Swenson is the chairman of Republicans Overseas. So is there a Democrats overseas on this panel too, or are we just giving the right wing another platform that they don't fucking deserve?
the percentage of casualties for Denmark was as high as the United States. So, look, it was a mistake. He's very unfiltered. But to the question, of course he can be trusted. I think the president wants a stronger NATO. And in many respects, alongside the Russia-Ukraine conflict, that I think inspired the Europeans to step it up. But he's been very critical. So was Barack Obama, for that matter. It's just that President Obama wasn't able to get any reaction and encourage the Europeans to step up defense spending.
Huh. I guess so. All right, I didn't know that. All right. Obama even started carrying that torch.
And the president's been successful with that. So we'll see. I mean, you have Denmark, for example, at 3%. They were only at 1.6 back in 2022. So you're seeing the outcomes. So you might not like the delivery. You might not like how he behaves or how he gets, how he makes the argument. But the argument is a good one. And so in this case, obviously a mistake on the reference to Afghanistan and Iraq. But the outcome is that we'll have a stronger NATO, whether that's because we have more defense mechanisms in Greenland or you have all the countries in NATO.
He's pushing Greenland? Seriously? He's pushing Greenland? Are you fucking kidding me?
All the European countries committing to 5% of GDP. Whether they get there is a different argument.
Emily, what do you make of that comment by Donald Trump?
It's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. It's so much more than a mistake. It's an absolute insult. It's an insult to 457 families who lost someone in Afghanistan. How dare he say we weren't on the front line? How dare he? We have always been there. Whenever the Americans have wanted us, we have always been there. I went out to the United States at the beginning of the year, and I had supper with a lot of Republicans who, to be quite honest, I didn't exactly expect to get on with and have a great deal to do with. But the one thing that was clearly there was a genuine affection for the United Kingdom, because they understood they were all military men, and they knew that whenever they had been fighting alongside someone from Britain who had been there to support the United States and be involved in action with the United States. How dare this man, who's never seen any action, who somehow or other, when there was a draft for everybody else in the United States, managed to avoid it, and yet now is commander-in-chief and knows nothing about how it is that America has been defended.
I wish we had politicians that would have said literally half, had the spine to literally say half of what she just said. Like, the audacity is there, absolutely. The fact that he's a 5-time draft dodger and then mocked service members, including Gold Star families, which are families who have lost service members to combat, mocked every one of them and called them losers and suckers. Yeah. I wish we had significantly more politicians in America that would bring that up as often as possible and disparage him for it, and then pass legislation to, protect our veterans instead of, raising the military budget by 1.5 or up to 1.5 trillion and gutting Medicare and all this other nonsense. But I digress.
I mean, seriously, it's an absolute insult. We have had a very shocking few days. We've had a very shocking few days where we have had the leader of Britain's most important ally, with whom we do have a close relationship in terms of defence, in terms of security, strong economic relationship, cultural, historic. America's our friends. But we have had a leader of that country who has behaved in a way which is bullying, which is rude, which has been deliberately trying to undermine us, which has been trying to undermine NATO. And you wonder, where does this end? It's as if he has no anchor. It's as if he has no off button. And what we have done, fortunately, and I'm really proud that we have, is we have linked arms with our other friends and nations, and we have said no, enough. Donald Trump, no more of this. You are not getting Greenland. You are not introducing tariffs. You are not going to be involved in military action. You are not going to breach international law. This is the line. Do not cross it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he will react to those threats or whatever you want to describe them as, but...
We don't threaten. We're just saying no.
Yeah, okay. But do you think NATO will be stronger because of Donald Trump? And I think the answer is yes.
No, I don't think that NATO is being stronger, because I think
this fucking guy is like, I don't know if he's going to respond to those threats. Bruh, and this is the quintessential image that other countries have of Americans. This motherfucker. I'm sorry, bootlicking conservatives is not indicative of Americans. It just isn't. To be fair, bootlicking Americans, whether they're bootlicking blue or bootlicking red, are the most vocal, and that's the problem. But, I mean, my God. The audacity of sitting on this panel and then being like, well, I mean, you guys are better off, aren't you? You gotta admit. Oh, my God.
Of NATO, saying that it's going to take on NATO and is going to invade one of the NATO countries, undermines us. Now, we've pulled it back from the brink, thank goodness, and actually what I'm most pleased about is that at least it helps Ukraine. Because what we don't want is NATO splintering, because it does not help a country like Ukraine for NATO at a moment like this to be splintered in this way. But I'm not going to pretend that that Donald Trump has done anything other than behave in a thoroughly reckless way.
So you don't think NATO will be stronger at the end of President Trump's second term?
I was talking to the German ambassador yesterday, and I said at least one thing that comes out of this is that it helps the smaller nations of NATO to remember that we need to stick together and we need to take more responsibility.
Okay.
Of course we do.
There's lots of hands up. Let's hear from the man in...
Yeah. And the guy continues to do his Republican MAGA, gotcha type. Aren't we doing better? Isn't it going to be better because of us after all? You got to admit it. You got to admit it. And just that, oh my God, to see it on an international panel like this, to see that kind of brazen arrogance that we are so used to seeing here in America being leveraged against a foreign panel is absolutely mind-blowing. Absolutely fucking mind-blowing.
In the dark blue sweater with a white shirt there. Yes. Yes.
I'm very disappointed to hear that Donald Trump said that about people like myself who served in Iraq.
Yeah. You served in Iraq?
I was in Iraq in 2003.
And so this idea that, well, he talked about Afghanistan actually, but the idea that British troops were holding back from the front line.
I can promise you I was very close to that front line. I crossed over the border on the first day of the war, and I saw things I don't want to see ever again. I think Mr. Trump has just upset all veterans now.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, thank you. Yes, man here in the front in the middle.
Trump is wrong about this, but he's not wrong about NATO underspend. It's a simple fact. He warned about it in his previous tenure. We had the Bundeswehr and certain NATO exercises wielding brooms instead of machine guns. He warned about Angela Merkel's closing relationship with Putin and over-reliance on Russia for energy, which undermined European security. And the truth is, no matter what you say about him, he is getting NATO to uphold their commitments to their 2% spend. We're in a more dangerous world with Russia and China. We have to arm, and we need to start taking the threat seriously. And Trump is getting that.
Yeah, and see, look at this fucking guy. That is pretty much the Aryan race made manifest. Like that was the poster child of the Aryan race. And it's the same kind of ignorant, uninformed arguments that every single young 20 to 30-year-old ultra-nationalist makes. We need a strong country because other countries are strong as well. And we need to resist them by arming ourselves and having bigger and better guns. Now, sure, fine. The only argument about relying on Russia for energy instead of, figuring it out yourselves, okay, that's a valid argument, especially if you find yourself at odds with Russia from time to time. Relying on a adversary for things like power and energy, yeah, that's probably not the smartest thing you can do. However, you can overcome that adversarial nature through diplomatic and trade relations that are mutually beneficial, right? Would Russia have invaded the Ukraine if Russia was equally dependent upon European trade as Europe is dependent upon Russian energy? Probably not. Which is probably why Russia didn't engage in trade deals that made it too reliant on the European Union. So, if you have a one-sided trade agreement, yeah, you're not going to get peace. You're certainly not going to get anything long-lasting. That is a valid point. But if your solution then becomes we need to make a larger army and to stockpile arms, that's directly what led to World War I. The fact that every nation in Europe and across the globe was engaging in an arms race. That is what led to World War I. World War II was almost the same thing because people were still wary of what happened in World War I. So to argue that stockpiling arms is a guarantee of safety and security is absolute absurdity. Right, a British MAGA bootlicker. So embarrassing. And of course, fascists and bootlickers will always agree no matter what country it is. He'd be saying the same thing for the Italian prime minister. He'd probably be saying the same thing for the Japanese prime minister. Right? Or maybe he wouldn't because they're both women and brown, right? So who knows? But strength through force, right? Instead of strength through economics and diplomacy and, culture and all that other fun stuff. No, we got to have the bigger, better guns so that no country will touch us, except countries are touching us. And they are not concerned with the military, though. China is dominating global trade. And they have every Western nation shaking in their boots because China dominates trade. And they haven't had to fire a single shot in our direction. And they are winning. They're getting to a point where they can buy and sell Europe They can certainly buy and sell certain European countries with impunity, including the UK, without having to fire a single fucking shot.
Okay. Harry, you asked the question. Let's hear what you've got to say on it.
My only worry is that why, if say that NATO gets stronger, but is threatening other NATO countries with tariffs, with the way he's going about it, even if NATO's stronger as a result, the means aren't worth the end. We shouldn't have one NATO country threatening another NATO country.
Exactly. Okay, Greg, I'll come back to you on that. Yes, man in the middle at the very back. Yeah. Yes, you.
Yeah, I don't know why no one expected this sooner. I mean, the United States only own all their land, unlike the continental United States. They only own the land because they moved in with military force and then forced them to buy it, forced them to sell their land that they didn't want to sell. There's already, like, tons of tribes that are being sat with massive money that they didn't want to receive from the United States. So why...
Where are you talking about in particular?
Sorry, I can't remember the name. But it's in Northern America.
Oh, so you're talking about the Native Americans?
Yeah, Native Americans. Yeah. So the fact that we can recognise all of that, and then suddenly, oh, they're doing the exact same thing, but it's Denmark to a bunch of white people who, you know, that's just...
Holy shit! Holy shit! This hippie fucking gets it. Like... Let's hear this again, because the contrast between him speaking and his fellow bootlicking peer, right? Stark contrast.
In the middle at the very back. Yeah.
I'm going to turn it up for myself.
I don't know why no one expected this sooner. I mean, the United States only own all their land, unlike the continental United States. They only own the land because they moved in with military force and then forced them to buy it. Forced them to sell their land that they didn't want to sell. There's already, like, tons of tribes that are being sat with massive money that they didn't want to receive from the United States. So why...
And I believe he's talking about the Sioux in, like, the Dakotas and that area. And I believe there's been land back granted in California, but yeah, no, the U.S., like, through the DAPL pipeline and all this other shit, continue to try and encroach upon indigenous lands while not honoring the treaties in the slightest, or the letter of the treaties, right? One of the biggest discrepancies with the Dakota tribe, I'm sorry, the Dakota, or is it Dakota Sioux? Either which way, the North Dakota tribes that were pushing back against DAPL, their treaty stated that they were supposed to receive funding for a school and like other buildings, but also $5,000 annually. Well, $5,000 in the 1850s when it was signed is worth millions of dollars today, and the United States writes a check for $5,000, right? So I believe that's the specific thing, because that was the one that was most notable in recent history, but absolutely fucking correct.
Where are you talking about in particular?
Sorry, I can't remember the name, but it's in Northern America.
Oh, so you're talking about the Native Americans?
Yeah, Native Americans. So the fact that we can recognise all of that, and then suddenly, oh, they're doing the exact same thing, but it's Denmark to a bunch of white people who, you know, that's just, yeah.
That's unsurprising to you.
It's unsurprising to me,
yeah.
Right, and again, highlighting the point that the outrage is limited to when it happens to white people in a European dominant landmass, which would be Greenland. Granted, never mind the fact that Greenland is a NATO ally, right? Like, let's just, like, ignoring that fact, it is white and European, and that's where all the outrage is coming from amongst the European leadership. Not the fact that we occupied and invaded Venezuela and murdered Venezuelan and Colombian fishermen in the Caribbean and in the Pacific. Not the fact that we're giving arms to Israel to slaughter Palestinians. Nobody batted a fucking eyelash to that. But now that we turned our attention to Greenland, that kid's absolutely fucking right. Why are we surprised? Historically, America has conquered their lands, which is what I brought up in the beginning of this stream. Brava.
Yeah. So Harry's question, by all means feel free to comment on what Donald Trump said this evening about NATO troops. But Harry's question is, why are we still fostering a special relationship with Donald Trump when his recent actions prove he can't be trusted? Do you think he can be trusted?
Well, firstly, on the comments that have been made, I want to echo that they are disgraceful comments, and I want to say thank you to the gentleman who did serve for us. There are many people in this country who served both in Iraq and Iraq and Afghanistan, many of whom lost their lives, but also many more who came back with life-changing injuries, and we should say thank you to them.
And so now they're proselytizing on this board, talking about support the troops, completely ignoring the kid that brought up the very valid point of, why are you clutching your pearls now that it's happening to us when you've been turning a blind eye when it was happening to everyone else? Fucking white people, man. Just ungoddamn believable.
Well, the United States Navy has deployed the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, which is now in the Arabian Sea. The carrier operates up to 70 aircraft, including FA-18 fighter jets and surveillance planes. Its nuclear-powered system allows for long-term deployment without refueling, and it's accompanied by 3 guided missile destroyers capable of attacking targets far inland and defending the aircraft carrier from air.
So, I'm going to point this out because it evidently needs to be pointed out, because no news network, including Al Jazeera, is going to bring up the point that the last time the United States deployed an aircraft carrier fleet or unit or whatever the fuck near a country, it resulted in invasion of that fucking country. It may have taken months from start to finish, but it still ultimately ended up in the invasion of Venezuela. So, the fact that we are positioning an aircraft carrier strike group with 75 aircraft capable of utter devastation and then long-range missile cruiser whatever ships near Iran means we are going to invade Iran. Not as a deterrence, not as a threat, not as a you better stop. We are literally positioning ourselves to invade, to attack, to destroy. Because this administration doesn't do deterrence. It only does escalation. Now, if Biden had done this, we could reasonably assume deterrence. If Trump in his first administration had done this, we could reasonably assume deterrence because he wouldn't have had nearly as much support within the legislative or the judicial branch to get away with it. If Obama was doing this, it would have been a 50-50 deterrence because he did attack 7 countries. And Bush, well, the Iraq war, so there is a chance that whatever he put, he was going to use as well. But for the most part, well, then again, Bush had the full support of Congress, so there is a difference there too. But this administration doesn't have the support of Congress, doesn't have the support of the Supreme Court, and is ignoring them anyway. Meanwhile, Congress is actually giving up its power. So I shouldn't say it's a lack of support, it's a lack of willingness to get involved, I guess. And we've already seen that he has used the military not only against foreign powers after deploying them, he's using the military or paramilitary to attack his own country. So this strike force being sent to within whatever range it needs to be to Iran is not a deterrence. It is an imminent threat. And again, illegal. In every single fucking sense of the word. And every single sailor or marine on those ships who are obeying these orders are guilty of following unlawful orders. Let's continue.
Or naval attacks. Let's explore this further. Joining us from Washington, D.C. is David DeRoche. He's a professor at the Thayer Marshall Institute. David, good to see you there. Thanks for joining us. So how do you see this? We've got this bristling U.S. military presence, a seemingly defiant Iran. Where is this heading?
Well, it's uncertain, but it's important to bear in mind that the Trump theory of victory for achieving its goals with Iran is not a military overthrow. It's increasing economic pressure so that the regime in Iran turns on itself. I think, if you look at Venezuela, for example, they removed Maduro, but they kept his team in place and figured that they could shape relations there.
I'm sorry. What? Did this motherfucker say that a victory for Trump is economic, not military, and then brought up Venezuela, where he used the military to invade a sovereign state, kidnap their sovereign head of state, and then traffic them back to the United States, and then didn't even charge them with the lies that they used as an excuse? Let's hear this again. Because what?
The Trump theory of victory for achieving its goals with Iran is not a military overthrow. It's increasing economic pressure so that the regime...
Okay. It is not a military overthrow. It is increasing economic pressure on the regime. And then he brings up Venezuela, which was a military overthrow, is a military overthrow that is ongoing.
Regime in Iran turns on itself. I think, if you look at Venezuela, for example, they removed Maduro, but they kept...
If you look at I can't. All right.
His team in place and figured that they could shape relations there. So I think what they're looking at here is, first off, trying to stress Iran's security.
If this Al Jazeera reporter doesn't ask him to clarify what he meant by Venezuela and Maduro, was that not a military intervention, a military strike, a military use of force? I swear to God.
Security infrastructure. Secondly, I think that there will be some attack against regime targets involved.
So that's a military force. This motherfucker contradicts himself within seconds.
Or implicated in the massacres of Iranian protesters so that Trump can say he made good on his words. And then I think that there is a strategic imperative to ensure that what was targeted by the U.S. in the summer is destroyed, is placed beyond use, and to ensure that Iran is unable to reconstitute its air defense network.
So you think...
Okay, I'm sorry. This fucking guy, this bald-headed motherfucker, literally said Trump does not want to use military force. He wants to use economic pressure. And then talked about Venezuela, which was economic force, not economic pressure. Which, it was military force to begin with, given the murders of fishermen in the Caribbean. And then said about Iran, oh yeah, there will eventually be strikes in Iran to finish the job or to do whatever, and then finish the job that we started earlier last year on the nuclear sites. Like, this goes beyond 1984. Because in the same statement, it's contradicting. Do not listen with your ears or see with your eyes. Only do what Big Brother says, except Big Brother is contradicting themselves in the same fucking breath. Oh my God. This fucking guy.
There will be an attack. What kind of timeline are we talking about?
Well, military logic would suggest that you attack when the moon is its lowest, which is the new moon and also the start of Ramadan.
Bro. The president does not want to use military force. He is going to use military force at the start of Ramadan, the holiest Muslim holiday in their faith. I don't know what day that is, though. I don't know when Ramadan starts. February 17th! Are you fucking kidding me right now? So, So this guy who said that in the same sentence that we want to use economic pressure, not military, but look at Venezuela, and yes, we're going to attack Iran. Of course we are. And if we're going to attack, we're going to attack at the start of Ramadan, which is in, 3 weeks? I'm getting better at this prediction thing, aren't I? I said we're going to do something. I just don't know when or how quickly. Apparently 3 weeks is the new timeline. It was 4 or 5 months. Now it's 3 weeks. If we're putting aircraft carriers next to a country, expect to carry out attacks within 3 weeks to 6 months. Are you fucking... Wow. And imagine saying that live. Just saying that live. Yeah, the U.S. is planning on attacking Iran on Ramadan, which is February 17th. Just brazenly. David Resrocious.
I don't know, honestly. I think that what we'll see is a period once the Lincoln's aircraft are in place and there's a substantial ground-based aviation package that is moving in as well. I think what we'll see are surveillance and reconnaissance flights along Iran's frontier in order to build up a signature of what Iran's existing air defense network looks like, to see what was destroyed in the summer, what was reconstituted, what might be new or unexpected. Once that is complete, we have a good sense of the air defense network, then if military action takes place, I think that the initial attacks will be against the air defense network, followed by the high-value targets, leadership, and ballistic missile and possibly nuclear sites.
So, we're going to use economic pressure. We're going to surveil Iran and determine what their defenses look like. And then we're going to take out their air defense systems and then, regime change. Oh, God. Oh, man. Okay. Yeah. Why the fuck not? Why the fuck not?
Again, the real has fallen through the floor, and Trump's preferred mode of option is economic stress that leads to regime overthrow. So I think they may be hoping that the regime is so stressed that if the protests flare up again, which they are possible of doing, the regime will have to change.
It's certainly within the US capability to make a targeted strike against the leadership. They would know where they were.
Well, that's always, one or two people is always hard to find, but certainly the headquarters and major supply functions and communications functions, the fixed assets of the regime leadership, are known and could be destroyed.
If it does come to this, what are the implications regionally, especially nearby states with US military presence, when it comes to a potential Iranian response, which they have said will be very, very heavy indeed?
Yeah, good question. So when Trump said earlier that he was going to take action in support of the protesters in Iran, he then turned around and I think he really...
And that part gets me too. Trump is going to attack Iran in defense of Iranian protesters who are upset with their leadership, but is in the same fucking breath calling protesters in America terrorists, and then lauding the murder of protesters who are armed, which is their fucking Second Amendment right, for protesting him and his paramilitary forces in our cities. And the base eats it up, and our media eats it up. Like, this is, again, I cannot emphasize enough. 1980, all right, I guess I'm crashing out, guys. I am crashing out. And this next one is not going to help.
We start in the US, where President Trump has warned Iran that time is running out for it to negotiate a deal on nuclear weapons. He said the next attack will be far worse than the US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities last June. The warning came in a long post on Truth Social. Let's take a look at some of it. It says a massive armada is heading to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm and purpose. Hopefully Iran will quickly come to the table. Time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal. Well, Iran's state media says the foreign minister has not been in contact with US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in recent days or requested negotiations. Tensions between the US and Iran are still high following the Iranian government's brutal crackdown on protesters. The USS Abraham Lincoln has arrived earlier, the aircraft carrier in the Middle East. And speaking in Iowa overnight, President Trump hinted at the military buildup in the region.
And in June, we obliterated Iran's nuclear capacity in Operation. We've been waiting.
Let's bring in Mikey Kay, former strategic military planner and host of the BBC Security Brief. So the Truth Social post from President Trump, Mikey, talking about this armada.
What the fuck background is this on this guy? I would say it's the Greenland flag, except it doesn't look like that. What the that looks like a fascist background in a sci-fi like series. What the?
That is heading towards the Middle East or has now arrived. What do we know about it?
Well, I mean, he's using the term armada. What he actually means is the carrier strike group, the CSG, and at the center of gravity of that carrier strike group is the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is a Nimitz-class carrier. And it's huge. And the weaponry on there, the aircraft on there is significant. We saw something similar on Venezuela. But that carrier is surrounded, Lucy, by a lot of warships and submarines. And we can see the carrier there. This carrier is the center of gravity of pretty much the U.S. military effort. It's not the only thing that the U.S. has. It's got home basing. And on the security brief this week, we're really taking a deep dive into what military assets are there. But this is the center of gravity of what he's talking about on this armada. Now, it's a massively strategic asset. So those warships that follow it everywhere are basically providing a layered air defense system for it, because obviously the US, anything that happens to that carrier would be a major significant problem for the US. And in terms of intelligence and location and what Iran is trying to do, right up there on their intelligence feed, will be trying to understand where that carrier is accurate enough so they could feed any GPS data coordinates into any ballistic missiles or what they want to throw at that. And that's what Iran are doing at the moment. And we saw that yesterday. We saw a long-range Iranian surveillance drone just south of the Straits.
Okay, so this is military porn at this point. This is what America has, and it's so big and it's so strong, and Iran is struggling to deal with the massive girth, and it's just, right? But suffice to say, between the Ramadan timeline and Trump's rhetoric and the fact that he's already invaded Venezuela and was on the brink of invading Greenland, I think he's looking to actually do something in Iran. And people won't bitch about it because they're brown people. And they're bad anyway because of their leaders. So who fucking cares?
Pakistan's military is set to launch a major operation against Pakistani Taliban and other armed groups in this remote mountainous Tira Valley, bordering Afghanistan. They say the increase in armed attacks in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province leaves them no other option.
Clear, hold, build and transfer. ये एक strategy है ना. इसका मतलब ये है.
Our strategy is straightforward. We first confront and fight the menace of terrorism, then secure the area to restore peace for our citizens, before transferring responsibility to the civil administration. Unfortunately, in the past, when our forces withdrew, these terrorists returned, forcing renewed operations and further sacrifices. Given this reality, we have no further option but to continue this fight to ensure lasting peace and security for our people.
Tens of thousands have been forced to flee. The vehicles keep arriving at this gathering point, driving through melting snow and the sludge. As the Pakistani forces reinforce their positions against Pakistani Taliban fighters and other armed groups. Tens of thousands of people are forced out of Tira Valley under rough weather conditions.
So, a different country, a different crisis, but at least it has nothing to do with America. But, unfortunately, let's see, we haven't even gotten halfway through this. So, let's cover a few other countries to wrap up here.
South Sudan's army commanders say they're about to defeat their enemies. They've counterattacked against opposition forces in Jonglei State. The UN and rights groups have expressed alarm following comments by a former militia leader, General Johnson Aloni, to his men who, this time, are fighting on the government's side.
This is the end of the Upper Nile. If we go there, there will be no elderly person, no chicken, no home that should remain.
That's terrible. They're talking about the death and destruction down to the very last man, woman, child, and fucking animal. Oh my God.
In recent weeks, social media videos posted on opposition-aligned accounts have claimed a series of victories. They also tell a story of escalating conflict. The UN says the fighting's reached a level not seen since South Sudan's last civil war, which ended in 2018. Nearly 400,000 people were killed in 5 years of fighting, many of them civilians, targeted for their ethnicity. The government says its forces are restoring public order and protecting civilians, and that General Aloni's comments don't reflect its position. The 5-year civil war followed South Sudan's independence from Sudan in 2011. In the last year, fighting's erupted again in at least 7 of South Sudan's 10 states. In recent weeks, opposition forces have taken parts of Jonglei State, about 400 kilometers from the capital Juba. That's where government forces have counterattacked. A diplomatic source told us this video shows civilians killed by incendiary weapons dropped from government aircraft in Jonglei State 4 weeks ago. Rights groups say dozens of civilians have been killed in aerial attacks. The government denies indiscriminate attacks and says opposition forces are responsible for harming civilians.
We in the SSPDF DNA.
Yeah, so the SDF, or rather what's happening in South Sudan, is yet another civil war where both sides are committing atrocities for the sake of peace. At least with Israel and Palestine, there's a clear-cut victim and a clear-cut aggressor. Palestinians being the victim, Israel being the aggressor. Same thing with Venezuela and America. Venezuela is the clear-cut victim and America is the aggressor. When it's with Ukraine and Russia, the lines are a little bit gray because Ukrainian leadership didn't stop the Nazi problem and Russia did. But now Russia wants Ukraine. So on the one hand, Russia bad for invading and not stopping with sending a message. And on the other hand, Ukraine bad for not stopping the Nazi problem, right? And then you have this, where both sides are committing atrocities, just straight up committing atrocities. China. Here we go. China.
Last thing here that I just had to get it here in the show. Again, enormously consequential. Huge shakeup at the top of the CCP. Let's put this up here on the screen from the Wall Street Journal. China's top general accused of giving nuclear secrets to the U.S. Bribery allegations have leveled against General Zhang. I'm not going to try and say it.
I gotta say, why would China give... Or why would a general give America Chinese nuclear information? Doesn't America have our own nukes to the umpteenth degree? Like, nuclear secrets? Like, we already have nuclear weapons. Bigger, faster, stronger, more destructive than anything else, right? Or China's getting a little bit more advanced? Because I think at the end of the day, an 80 megaton warhead or a 110 megaton warhead or even a gigaton warhead is still going to wipe major cities off of the face of the earth and make them inhabitable for centuries. So uninhabitable for centuries. So like, I don't even understand why a general would still. Okay, but why not? Let's hear the story. Let's get to the.
I apologize. I'm just going to call him General Zhang, whose downfall carries implications for the country's military readiness. I mean, this is literally his senior most general. So the equivalent of kind of like the vice president or the joint chiefs of staff, who is being accused by Xi Jinping of selling nuclear weapon secrets to the U.S., of accepting bribes for official acts, for including the promotion of an officer to defense minister, is shocking, because it is part of an ongoing kind of military purge at the very top level by the CCP. Let's look, there's a lot of various theories kind of behind all of this. Why don't we start first with the coup rumors? Let's put F4 up here on the screen. No one is taking seriously the idea that he actually leaked nuclear secrets. It was more that they're willing to accuse him, Ryan, of leaking military secrets. So here's what he says. So the best compilation of coup rumors circulating amongst the Chinese diaspora. Again, these are rumors not confirmed, but there's no leaks that come out of China. That's part of the difficulty of dealing with all this. He says, democracy activists posted on social media revealing a conversation from inside the Great Firewall where they disclose that they had planned to move against Xi Jinping and capture him on the evening of January 18th, Beijing time, when he was set to stay at a hotel in Beijing. Now, for the past few years, quote, he has been homeless, changing locations every few days. Details of the capture Xi operation, citing sources originally planned to strike on that evening. However, 2 hours before the operation, they were betrayed by an informant, and Xi Jinping immediately evacuated and set up an ambush or a counter capture, and allegedly he's even claiming that there was some sort of gunfight. Now, this is something from beyond the firewall, but it was elevated by some China watchers whom I respect. It would be absolutely extraordinary. Right, exactly. Literal, serious people who take.
But they weren't saying it's true. But it is it's a story that's being told.
It is a story that's being told, in the activist community and others. Our other friend Arnaud Bertrand, who you contacted, Ryan, has shot that down. I do want to make sure that we put his up here.
So hold up. This story is that it didn't happen, and that there is no coup in China, but there's an excuse to get rid of this general anyway, like that. That's a little confusing. I'm not gonna lie. That was a little rough to follow. Because everything else to do with China right now has to do with their economic power and their ability to get into space. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm worn out from all of the war and the genocide that we've been covering today. But there was all this allegedly and rumors, not anything really credible. Because if that was true, wouldn't that have made it into Western news and be like a top headline? China thinks they're number one, but we just struck a blow by getting one of their generals or something like you would. I don't know.
Firecrackers and pigeon whistles, sounds rarely heard in modern-day Beijing, greet visitors at the Sound Art Museum. It's the first museum in the world focusing on sound and explores the role it plays in art, history, and music. British-Chinese artist Colin Siu and Chinnery co-founded the museum.
Sound is very flexible, and to create projects with sound, you can actually do it in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of settings. And it's the flexibility that goes with flux.
He says that flexibility matters at a time of global change. He'll be watching UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's visit to China closely. Chinnery says he's travelled...
What the fuck? This has nothing to do with the visit.
For more than a century, these steelworks have towered over Scunthorpe in the north of England. Its blast furnaces once powered British manufacturing, so when a Chinese firm bought the plant in 2020, There was hope new investment could reverse years of decline. Instead, with mounting losses, the new owners seemed ready to shut down the UK's last remaining blast furnaces, a move that's hard to undo, prompting the UK government to take control. Former steelworker Charlotte, the third generation of her family to have worked in the plant, says more than just jobs were at stake.
The blast furnaces in Scunthorpe are the last blast furnaces in the UK, and it cannot be understated their importance to national security. If we cannot make it here, then we end up buying in components and parts from China and Russia and Ukraine, and global politics make that very precarious.
As the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer visits China, workers in Scunthorpe hope he can secure the plant's future.
The site is enormous.
Wouldn't that literally still be relying on foreigners? If we need, or if UK needs Chinese investment to keep a blast furnace up and running because no UK business leader wants to do that, then you're still effectively relying on foreign labor and foreign interests to get you your stuff. So, like, I'm again confused because I really don't think people understand the things that they're saying. Now, on principle, yes. If you can make it at home, that's the best option. But in a globalization society that relies on capitalism and the profit motivation, you're still relying on foreign investment to do domestic production of things that you need. That's the opposite of ensuring that it stays within the domestic area. Okay. Speaking of China and trade, so these next few are going to be about China, because China number one, and I guess we can do this for fun.
Welcome to the Global News Podcast on YouTube, where we go behind the headlines to look at one story and why it matters. Today, the contest between the United States and China to be number one global superpower as Western leader.
Well, right now, I'm pretty sure China's winning that particular war because Chinese global influence in trade clearly eclipses America's. And you know what? I shouldn't do this. I was trying to be funny, but I'm like, yeah, maybe that isn't as funny as I thought it was going to be, especially since I'm running for Congress.
After Western leader heads to Beijing to court Xi Jinping, what balance should they try to strike between doing deals and human rights? I'm joined from Beijing by our China correspondent, Laura Bicker. Laura, the first visit from a UK Prime Minister in 8 years. Canada's Mark Carney's just been. Finland's leader has just left. Friedrich Merz of Germany is going. What is it that China has that they want? And is it worth annoying Donald Trump to get it?
This is the factory of the world. It is the biggest manufacturer in the world. Just give you a few examples. You know, if you're looking at the future of our planet, China is the lead in renewables. It produces everything from around 60 to 80% of electric vehicles, solar panels, wind turbines, electric batteries. China makes more robots than anywhere else in the world. China has and processes more rare earths than anywhere else in the world, about 90% of rare earths, for instance. And these are the kind of extracts, these minerals that are needed to make anything from an electric vehicle to your smartphone to Bluetooth speakers. So when it comes to the future technology, when it comes to the things that we've kind of got used to, China really is key. And that is one of the reasons why so many countries are flocking here. And China is saying to all of these countries, look, I'm here, I will offer you a deal, we'll sit down and negotiate. I think the other thing, China doesn't see alliances in the same way perhaps that the West does. It doesn't demand fealty. It doesn't demand you adopt its ideology. In many ways, it sees it as very transactional. This to China is a business deal. It is using trade to gain power, to gain influence in this great power competition that it's in with Washington.
Does China keep to...
Which is exactly what China has done historically for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And I'm not mistaking, I'm not misspeaking. For thousands of years, this is what China has done. Has China been a unified country for thousands of years? No. But Chinese trade and economic relationships with its neighbors, that's how it's always been done. And as they became a unified nation in the mid-first millennium, that's exactly how they started influencing other nations up until the Mongol invasion in, the 1100s? Right, that's when that changed. But still, Chinese politics ended up influencing the Mongols that tried to take them over. So China, relying on trade as just transactional deals and then indebting countries to them, is what China's been doing for centuries, literal centuries. And the West is shocked, like, oh my goodness, I never saw this coming, because you never fucking read a history book, because during the industrialization period, you viewed Chinese people as subhuman vermin to build your factories and railroads for. And you completely disregarded their centuries of history and the fact that they always bounce back, which they did and which they are currently doing. So, speaking of which,
Chef Sei-Chung Siu-Wu owns 6 Chinese restaurants, or chifas, as they're called in Peru, a version of Cantonese food turned into a traditional Peruvian staple. But Peru's relationship with China goes way beyond the cuisine, dating back to the mid-19th century. Some 100,000 Chinese laborers were brought to work mines producing the fertilizer guano, as well as cotton and sugarcane plantations, and build railways in slave-like conditions.
Gee, did I or did I not just bring that up?
When Sei-Chung arrived 36 years ago from Canton Province, the bonds were already established and strengthened by a free trade agreement signed 16 years ago. However, Sei-Chung says he's now impressed by a recent growing Chinese presence here.
There is Chinese investment almost everywhere. There's quite a lot. They're even building roads, also setting up restaurants, opening supermarkets.
1 year ago, Chinese President Xi Jinping and former President Dina Boluarte inaugurated the $3.5 billion port of Chancay for deepwater container vessels, bypassing ports in the US and Mexico and cutting down shipping costs. With Chancay and Shanghai only 23 days apart across the Pacific, experts say the target of 200,000 containers has long been surpassed, paving the road for more business. There's a growing market for small entrepreneurs from China finding local partners to do business here, but also Peruvians looking for Chinese goods from toys to cars, all brought in through the new port. Toy vendor Aide Hugo says she can see the effects.
There is a wide variety of products, countless options to suit all customers' tastes. The port of Chancay has allowed more products to enter and for us to stock up.
Chinese imports to Peru surpass Peru's exports to China by at least $400 million.
This new gateway is improving our trade relationship, but there's still much room for improvement. Imports are still higher, and not all products are non-traditional.
As more goods make their way from Shanghai to Chancay and back, many people are hopeful the trade will create even more opportunities to expand business. Mariana Sanchez, Al Jazeera, Lima.
Don't miss out.
Like I said, China does a great deal of engaging in trade with other countries where China number one, right? And I guess I do want to be a little cheeky. China loves to trade with other countries to make the benefits to China number one. I guess we'll also do, so this is Peru, which is in South America, and then...
Seasonal farm workers arrive here just after dawn to sign up for the cherry harvest. There's no time to lose to get these to China, Chile's #1 market. Cherries are a luxury item there, often given as gifts, like a box of exquisite chocolates, because their red color and round shape are thought to bring good luck for the Chinese New Year.
It's well paid. With this year's harvest, I'm going to finish December with plenty for the new year.
Chile produces the lion's share of this nearly $6 billion business, making cherries key for the economy.
These cherries are just incredible. They are red, they are round, they are sweet and tasty, exactly what the Chinese market demands. It has brought good luck for the Chileans too, except when the Chinese take out their claws.
4 years ago, they nearly crippled the cherry industry in retaliation for a bill presented to Congress to prevent foreign government-owned companies from acquiring controlling interests in strategic sectors of the economy. The bill has still not been passed.
I keep saying China uses trade to heavily influence foreign countries, and indebting those countries to China and subverting those countries' economics to China. That's what they're doing. Now, on the one hand, they are improving trade relations with these countries and diplomatic relations with these countries. On the other hand, China is going to try and dominate the market because that's what they've been doing for centuries throughout history. So it's funny in the sense that, like, they're doing what they're always doing, and the reporting is like, I can't believe China's doing this. These countries are like, oh my gosh, you can't have controlling power in our country. That would be disastrous to our economy if we become that reliant upon you. We'd be vassal states. And China's like, duh. So anywho. To be fair, America does the exact same shit. We just also follow through with military invasion and regime change. Now, these next two are going to be interesting because they have to do with the space race that is somehow also resurfacing. So, like, every historical phenomenon and major event really is happening in 2025 and, in the 2020s for that matter. Right, because we had the plague of COVID, which was like the Spanish flu and so on. You get where I'm going with this. We are bringing back the space race now as well. So this should be interesting.
Rockets, satellites, and space capsules. Just some of the technology on display at the Beijing International Commercial Space Exhibition. Among the participants is Galactic Energy, one of the biggest private space firms in China. Wu Yue has worked for the rocket developer since 2019 and believes China has entered a great space age.
I grew up watching American movies about space. I never dreamed I would work in a company like this.
It's exactly the kind of company Beijing is eager to support. Last year, it set up a department dedicated to expanding the country's commercial space sector.
This company has 2 series of rockets, including one capable of reaching a distance more than 500 kilometers away. So far, they've completed 21 successful launches, taking satellites into orbit for use in navigation and communications.
China's private space industry is relatively nascent, but already worth an estimated $350 billion. Its development is in line with the country's ambition to become a major space power by 2045. Progress has been rapid. China runs one of only 2 space stations in orbit. The Tiangong has been in operation since
$340 billion industry. Okay. U.S. total space industry value. Yeah, that's damn near triple ours. That's crazy. China has invested $340 billion in their space, and we're only nationally invested $130 billion. Like, China is gonna own space at this rate as well. Oh my goodness, China's an interesting country. I find it fascinating from a historical perspective because China is basically a sine wave in history, right? So if this is the baseline, right, of the sine wave, well, if this is the baseline of the sine wave where things are equal to everything else across the globe, right? China hasn't advanced or been beneath other countries. China rapidly surpasses other countries, right? Economics, trade, production, military, whatever have you. Something happens at their peak, and then it's a swift decline, but it doesn't hit normalcy. It doesn't hit the status quo. it usually falls behind in some way. Just like during the Industrial Revolution, where China went from this during the Renaissance and post-Renaissance era to down here where the Industrial Age was taking off and China was like, we're not doing that shit, to where the Industrial Age really kicked off and China literally became owned by European powers and was being literally carved up, to where post-industrial China and the Communist Revolution put it on the same level as European productivity, to where now in the 2020s, like right here was in the 80s, 70s, where it started investing in infrastructure, and then the globalization market where China is now once again peaking. Now maybe it'll take 20 or 30 years at the peak before it starts to decline again, but what we are seeing is the historical sine wave of China on its upward peak rise, and it's very interesting.
2022 and has continuously hosted space missions.
It's also a prime example of what a country could achieve if it invests in itself and her people. Imagine if America invested in her people, in education, in R&D, in infrastructure, instead of literally invading our own cities to terrorize our own citizenry. Imagine if.
In 2024, it became the first country to retrieve samples from the far side of the moon. But while China's making strides, it's still behind the United States. The US remains the dominant force in space, launching more rockets than any other country, with firm SpaceX leading the way. However, some believe China isn't far behind, including Enrique de la Poza, who's worked in the aerospace industry for 40 years.
I grew up with this business, so I'm quite interested and I follow up this, and that's why this is my feeling that,
The growing space rivalry isn't just about science or exploration. It has implications for defense and, increasingly, artificial intelligence. Some technology companies have plans to put AI data centers into space. In China, advancements...
Well, at least if you put an AI data center into space, it wouldn't be taking up the power grid of cities and communities and wasting our potable water. It would be cooled in the vacuum of space and with solar panels powered by the freaking sun. If we're going to build data centers anywhere, space would be the one that makes the most fucking sense.
In space aren't just a source of national pride. As Earth's orbit grows more crowded, Beijing believes the country with the most satellites and best access will have the most power. Katrina Yu, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
This may look like just a model rocket display, but what you're seeing is part of China's push into the commercial space sector. These belong to Galactic Energy, one of the biggest private players here in China, and they specialize in producing rockets, including reusable rockets, a technology which has made space launches and space exploration dramatically more cost-effective. Now, they've already launched 21 rockets successfully into space, carrying satellites that are used for communication and navigation purposes. And this is precisely the type of company China would like to see more of. They're investing more in the commercial space sector, which here in China is relatively nascent. However, it is estimated to be worth already about $350 billion. And
I like how they mention that it's worth $350 billion and don't mention how much the West is invested. Like America, for instance, which is our greatest rival, I guess, right? So America has 130 billion, and China has 350. That's nearly triple the investment. I mean, it's much closer to triple than it is like 2.5. So I just, even when we're reporting on just economic and science and technology, we have disingenuous reporting, or we're just, I guess, maybe not trying to hurt America's feelings. Man, I really wish we could just stick to the economics, but the rest of these videos, which we're obviously not going to get to all of them,
A road full of rocks, lined up as if it's a checkpoint. It took weeks for brothers Mohammed and Ahmed Hassan to put these big rocks on the road, so when the Israeli soldiers come at night, their vehicles slow down here. giving the villagers enough time to hide.
So Israel is defending itself by invading Syria now. Because, you know, Syria is not in turmoil with its own civil unrest and, you know, terrorist leadership. Israel decides to now attack Syria as well as Palestine, as well as all their other neighbors. Which is also ironic because this terrorist leader of Syria, who is an actual terrorist, unlike Gaddafi and Assad. No, Assad, right? It was Assad. So unlike Assad, who was not a terrorist, this current guy was literally the head of Al-Qaeda, an actual terrorist organization. That guy is best friends with Trump. They're buddy-buddy. How handsome he is and whatever else, right? But Israel is attacking his country as well. So it's like Israel just continues to do whatever the fuck they want, and America continues to bend over no matter if it's against their allies or their friends or their budding relationships. And exactly, Anna. They're invading other countries and seizing their lands, which they have no fucking right to do, but that's what colonizers do. They seize land with impunity and dare those countries or those communities to stand up to them. America did it through Manifest Destiny, and it's celebrated in our history books and in our classes. So Israel's like, why can't we do the same thing? We need to find a video to wrap up with because none of these are particularly nice. None of these are particularly good news. Here, I mean, it's about
Long
China.
the world's most populous country, China is now shrinking. The population in decline here for a fourth straight year, mainly because more Chinese couples are making a conscious choice to not have babies. Well, at least not human ones. Like people in their 20s and 30s in the U.S. and elsewhere, China's millennials and Gen Zs are often choosing a different path to parenting. Doting on dogs, cats, and other cherished creatures instead of children.
Well, I mean, kids are cherished creatures too. We're all animals. I'm gonna get canceled for saying that. I'm sorry.
Compared to raising kids, it costs less for a dog, she says.
It's more easy.
China's lowest birth rate on record, 5.6 per 1,000 people, coincides with an explosion in pet ownership here. The pet economy hit an estimated $113 billion last year.
Jesus.
And by 2030, Goldman Sachs predicts that Chinese pets will outnumber Chinese toddlers 2-1. The reason,
which is crazy, right? Because the whole point of curbing the birth rate in China was because the population was expanding too much. So now you're going to have a 2-to-1 pet to child ratio. China's going to have to ban pets to only one per household. Like, oh my fucking God.
Reasons behind the decline in kids are in part economic, with rising unemployment, competitive pressures, and unaffordable housing.
Wait, I thought China had a ridiculously high housing percentages amongst working class. So, oh wait, this is from NBC. You're right. So we got to take everything they say with a grain of salt.
The traditional view of marriage and family has also changed.
The younger generation, they started to realize, like, what if this is not the life I want?
Why are they wanting pets instead of kids?
Like, you have to think about their educations and their futures. But like my dog, as long as he's happy, his tail is like wagging every day, I'm good, you know?
The plunge is fueling a demographic crunch as China juggles an aging population. Fewer children will mean a smaller workforce in the future, putting the economy at risk. It was only a decade ago that China ended its one-child policy.
Oh, I'm ignorant. Okay, never mind. They stopped the one-child thing. Okay, I'm ignorant. I thought that was still in effect. China number one. And I'm wrong. Sorry, I'm an American. Fuck yeah, America.
Posed ruthless family planning rules to control population and punished couples who defied them. These days, the Communist Party is hyping for a baby boom, offering cash and incentives for 2 or 3 kids, calling it an...
But that is kind of ironic, right? So a decade ago, they realized that the population decline was happening and that it was going to impact the workforce in China #1. And now, a decade later, they're like, wait a minute, we need you to have bebés. Also, we're capitalists now, so we're going to make your life a little bit harder than it was 10 years ago. It's kind of stupid, honestly. It's really stupid that every country on planet Earth is dealing with the same exact problems, the same exact economic conditions, and the same economic crises that stem from the same economic principles, i.e. capitalism. It's only hard to have families. It's only difficult to deal with rising cost of living and cost of goods in a for-profit model that does not give a shit about the consumer, about the worker, about the civilian. And if governments bend over and spread their cheeks for capitalists every chance they get, then they don't even represent the people anymore, which means it exacerbates itself. And then people choose to get pets instead of children because there's no benefit to raising children if it's going to financially destroy them because the economic conditions continue to decline. And that's not just China. That's literally America. That's literally Europe. That's China. That's South Korea. I would argue it's every country that has embraced capitalism. Unbelievable. And on that note, we've made it to the end of the stream. So, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for participating in the chat, in the stream, being a part of this channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We really appreciate your support in spreading the word and building the platform. Without you, none of this was possible. So, with that being said, tomorrow is Recap Thursdays. We're going to cover anything that we may have missed in these past few days, and God forbid, whatever comes up between then and now. So, be safe. Have a great night. See you tomorrow. Samuel Ronan, your president, out.